Picture a tiny pin on your lapel that turns red lights green and laws into suggestions. Sounds wild, right? That's the fantasy people have about diplomatic immunity. A secret shield, a cheat code. Do anything, walk away. Here's the truth. Immunity isn't a prize for the person. It's protection for the job. It exists so countries can talk to each other when politics get messy, without a host government threatening, jailing, or pressuring the messenger. That invisible shield is about function, not freedom. So what does it actually do? It blocks the host country from prosecuting a diplomat. Police can't haul them to court for crimes, even serious ones. But notice this: immunity doesn't erase the crime. It moves the problem. The host can kick them out, declare them persona non grata, and make sure they're on a plane fast. Their own country can waive immunity, hand them over, or bring them home to face charges there. Sometimes it does. Sometimes it doesn't. Either way, there's a record, there's a trail, there's a consequence. But wait, what about the family? Spouses and kids often get protected status too, but they're not superhuman. If something horrific happens, that shield still comes with pressure, headlines, and diplomatic fallout. Careers end, futures shrink, doors close. The idea of no consequences is a myth. And here's a twist people miss. Not every official has the same shield. Consular officers, the folks at the window who stamp your visa, usually get immunity only for acts done as part of their job. Step outside those duties, and that protection can crack. Staff can have narrower coverage. Titles matter. Roles matter. Context matters. Could someone try to hide behind immunity after a terrible act? Yes. Would they be untouchable? No. The host can detain briefly to prevent immediate harm, seize a vehicle, secure a scene, and then escalate through diplomatic channels. Travel gets restricted. Names land on watch lists. A country can refuse future entry. Insurance fights rage. Civil claims can pop up in home courts. That's not a free pass. That's a political storm. So why keep it at all? Because without it, countries could silence each other's envoys whenever talks get tense. Immunity keeps the lines open when the stakes are highest. It's the seatbelt that you hope you'll never need, but you're grateful it's there the moment the road turns dangerous. Does that mean someone can do the worst thing imaginable and simply walk away? Listen closely. No. It means accountability might not happen right there, in that courthouse, on that day. It may happen back home, under a different flag, after a lot of pressure and a lot of paperwork. It may look slower or quieter than you want, but it's never nothing. The shield is real. The license to harm is a myth. And the bill for crossing that line, sooner or later, always comes due. Picture a dusty porch, a silent mailbox, and a door that creaks open like a secret invitation. Tempting, right? A place to sleep, no rent, no lease, just quiet. It sounds like a cheat code for adulthood, but here's the truth hiding behind that whisper of a loophole. Squatters' rights isn't a magic phrase. It's a century-old doctrine meant to settle long-forgotten boundaries and abandoned responsibilities. It's less pirate treasure and more a slow, boring marathon that ends in court paperwork. The big promise of living free, that's the headline. The fine print is much longer. So what does the law actually care about? It cares that someone stepped up and treated a neglected place like a home, and did it openly, continuously, and like they meant it. Not sneaky, not hidden, and often, for years. Sometimes taxes need to be paid. Sometimes there has to be a good faith belief. Rules shift by state and country. but the theme is the same. It's not a shortcut, it's a slog. Here's the twist. If you slip inside a place you don't own, you're not a folk hero. You're likely trespassing. Owners can call the police. Neighbours talk. Paperwork appears. And that supposed loophole can turn into a fast eviction and a record you don't want. Think of squatters' rights like a safety net for long-abandoned property, not a coupon for free rent. But wait, what about the stories? The friend of a friend who held down a place and ended up keeping it. Those tales skip the scariest chapters, months of uncertainty, legal notices, court dates, stress that sits on your chest at 2 a.m. Also, those rare wins usually involve places that were truly forgotten, with years of maintenance, receipts, and a judge who's convinced someone did the hard work an owner refused to do. Myth. Easy. Reality. Heavy. Expensive. Risky. Ask yourself this. Do you want a home or a fight? Because there are cleaner paths that still feel like a hack. Caretaker gigs that trade low rent for lawn work. House sitting for people who travel. Co-ops that swap sweat equity for community. Even reaching out to small landlords who need a reliable hand can open doors that lock from the inside. None of that's as flashy as a loophole, but it's solid. It's yours. And here's a guardrail for your brain. If any so-called trick needs secrecy, lies, or new locks at midnight, it's not a trick, it's a trap. The kind that costs more than rent ever would. If you're curious about the legal side, talk to a lawyer or a housing clinic where you live. Every jurisdiction writes the rules in its own handwriting. So yes, the law has quirks. Some are weird, some are old, some look like shortcuts until you walk them and realize they're switchbacks up a cliff. If what you really want is stability, don't chase a loophole. Build a bridge and cross it in daylight. If justice is blind, someone taught it to feel for designer shoes. Here's how the game's really played. When the stakes are life or prison, the powerful don't outrun the law, they outlast it. Time becomes a shield. Delay hearings. Flood the court with motions. Stretch the calendar until witnesses move. Memories fade, and the clock itself becomes a co-conspirator. Statutes don't care why they ran out, just that they did. And when time isn't enough, they rent distance. Not, I did it, but the company did it, or the contractor did it, or that offshore entity with 5 doors and no people did it. If a corporation takes the hit, a person doesn't. A fine gets written as a business expense. Punishment becomes a price, and a price is just a line item. Ever hear the phrase, cooperate and resolve? It sounds noble. It often means admit nothing, pay a lot, promise reforms, hire a monitor, and walk away without handcuffs. That's not accountability. That's a settlement costume pretending to be justice. But there's more. Some people carry invisible armor. Diplomatic passports that say, send me home, don't try me here. Titles that come with layers of privilege. Networks that can pick up a phone and make a headache vanish before it grows teeth. Is every shield absolute? No. But when you've got pull, even a soft shield is enough to slow the blow. And here's the twist. Narrative is a weapon too. Bring in the best storytellers with law degrees. Former prosecutors turn defenders who know exactly where the seams are. Public relations teams that reframe a scandal as a misunderstanding. Jury consultants who whisper, here's the person who'll hear you the way you need. You feel that? That's not just law. That's theatre. And it works. What about whistleblowers? Gagged by agreements, crushed by costs, or drowned in internal investigations that look thorough but steer away from the names on the top floor? What about the people in charge of charging? They're elected, they're resourced, they're human. They weigh odds and budgets and headlines. When the defendant can burn money like firewood, a prosecutor has to choose which mountain to climb. So why do some walk while others sit? Because power changes the terrain. The path the rest of us take is a straight shot from act to consequence. Their path is a maze. Doors that open only from the inside. Hallways lined with experts, lobbyists, accountants, and friends in the right rooms. If the maze is complicated enough, the exit looks like fate instead of design. Does this mean there's no justice? No. It means justice needs help. Sunlight, paper trails, real teeth in penalties so a crime isn't cheaper than compliance. It means we treat deferred like a pause, not a pardon. And we remember that a system that bends too often eventually breaks. So when you hear someone say, "No one is above the law," ask a quiet follow-up. Above it, no. But how many built staircases, hidden, expensive, carefully engineered, that let them step over it, clean? Imagine sliding a name that isn't yours across a cold glass counter, hearing the faint stamp, and feeling your heartbeat try to punch through your ribs. For a split second, the world seems to believe the lie. For a split second, you breathe. Now pause. Does that stamp mean you're safe? Fake passports sound like magic keys, movie props that open any door. The truth's less glamorous. It's messy, dangerous, and built on fragile threads. A fake identity isn't just ink and plastic. It's a story, a face, a past that needs to hold under bright lights and bored eyes that have seen every trick before. Borders don't just check names. They watch how you stand, how you answer, how your nerves leak out in tiny human ways. Ask yourself, who's selling that promise of invisibility? People who profit from panic. Networks that talk about new life while chaining you to theirs. They don't tell you about the wait that comes after the crossing, the constant rehearsal, the quiet dread, the split-second flinch when someone says your real name in a crowded room. They don't mention the price either, not just the money, the cost of being a ghost in your own skin. Here's the part most stories skip. Borders aren't just gates. They're webs, records cross-reference, patterns whisper, screens glow with data you'll never see. The person across the counter may look distracted, may tap a keyboard like they're ordering lunch, but the system behind them is listening for the softest crack in your story. And cracks always arrive. Not right away, not dramatically, but like a hairline fracture spreading under quiet pressure. So what happens when the mask slips? It doesn't burst into flames. It just falters. A harmless question lands wrong. A familiar face recognizes an old photo. A routine check suddenly isn't routine, and the room gets colder. People imagine escape as a sprint through an open gate. It's not. It's a long walk on thin ice. Each step a wager you're willing to lose everything if it breaks. Why do people take that step? Fear, shame, desperation. Sometimes they're running from danger. Sometimes they're running from themselves. But no matter the reason, the rules don't bend for the story you're telling. They've heard them all. Identity seems like a costume you can change. It's not. It's a promise. And promises have a way of coming due. The quiet truth is this. The real loophole people brag about is luck. Luck in the right clerk, the right crowd, the right day. And luck runs out. If you're hearing the pull of a new name, take a breath. Ask the harder question. What are you really trying to escape? because a fake passport can cross a line on a map, but it can't carry you past the consequences that wait on the other side. A missing checkbox can turn a solid case into smoke. It sounds absurd, but that tiny square can decide whether evidence speaks or vanishes. Because the law doesn't just care about what happened, it cares about how we prove it. Process isn't paperwork for its own sake. Process is proof. Picture this. Detectives collect a knife. It's bagged, tagged, logged, almost. One signature on the chain of custody form is missing. That gap gives the defense a thread to pull. They tug, and the judge has to ask, is the evidence exactly what it claims to be? If the answer is, we can't be sure, that knife never meets the jury. Without the knife, the story falls apart, and a case that looked airtight suddenly can't breathe. Here's another. A prosecutor files a motion a day late. Not a month late, not wildly negligent, just late. But deadlines in court are like railroad signals. You blow past one, even by inches, and the train doesn't go. Or a warrant with the wrong apartment number. Or a Miranda form misfiled. One clerical wrinkle, and the whole suit doesn't fit. Is that a loophole? Not exactly. It's a line in the sand. We draw that line on purpose because the state has power. Real, life-altering power. And the rules are how we keep that power honest. When the rules are followed, even a painful verdict feels legitimate. When they're bent, even the right outcome feels wrong. Psychologically, we equate fair process with fair outcome. So when the process breaks, our trust breaks with it. And here's the twist. Technicalities don't say, this didn't happen. They say, you didn't prove it the right way. It's not shielding the person, it's shielding the standard. Not truth at any cost, but truth with guardrails. That shift matters. It's the difference between a system that can correct itself and a system that drifts into close enough. Framing it that way, not a loophole, but a line, flips the story from outrage to understanding. Does it feel infuriating when someone walks because of a date stamp, a typo, a missing signature? Of course it does. But think about the days when you'd want those same guardrails. When the address on the warrant is your place. When the late filing is about your rights. When the label on the evidence bag has to be perfect because your future is hanging on it. In those moments, a technicality isn't trivial. It's the only thing standing between power and you. So, yes, cases can collapse on paper cuts. A stray line, a wrong box, a deadline missed by a breath. It's messy, it's maddening, and it's the trade we make to live under rules, not under moods. The paradox is simple. The tiniest rules carry the heaviest weight. Because in court, process isn't a path to justice. Process is the point. Picture this. You crash a car, the tow truck shows up, and instead of a ticket, you get a free upgrade and a pat on the back. Wild, right? Now swap the car for a bank, and you're closer to how this game is played. When a big bank slips, alarms go off, not just inside that building, but across the whole financial grid. Money isn't just money. It's the plumbing behind paychecks clearing, cards swiping, loans funding small shops, rent getting paid. If the pipes burst, everything gets soaked. That's the argument for stepping in, fast. So the rescue arrives, loans at friendly rates, guarantees that calm the market, a quick merger with training wheels. The public message is, protect deposits, protect jobs, stop the dominoes. And that part isn't a lie. If the system wobbles, regular people pay first and worst. Here's the part that sticks in your throat. The people steering the wheel. They often walk away with cushions. Maybe not every time, but enough that the pattern shows. Losses are shared, pain is spread, but the top floor finds the softest landing. Private gains, social losses. The formula is tidy. The feeling is not. Why does it happen? Because risk inside finance isn't isolated. It's braided together. One collapse can yank the rope and pull others down. So leaders choose the least bad door, rescue the system. But when rescue becomes routine, it morphs into a loophole. Take big risks, pocket the upside, and if it blows up, the emergency exit lights up. That's called moral hazard, and it's not abstract. If a kid knows the vase gets replaced for free, you'll see more broken vases. Simple. The fix isn't to let the house burn. The fix is to move the fire alarm closer to the people holding the matches. So what would accountability sound like without torching the neighborhood? Clawback pay tied to risky bets. Real money, not symbolic. If a bank needs a rescue, leaders shouldn't keep the bonus tied to the gamble. Make investors feel the downside before the public does. Equity gets wiped, then debt holders take a hit, long before taxpayers carry the bag. Set rules that are boring on purpose. Higher cushions, stricter limits, fewer clever detours. Boring banks don't explode. And here's the twist. Tell the truth in plain language. If a rescue is really about protecting everyday transactions, say that. If executives blew holes in the hull, say that too, and act on it. Transparency isn't just a vibe, it's pressure that creates consequences. We should save the system when it's at risk. That's about keeping the lights on for everyone. But saving the system doesn't mean saving the culprits from the bill. Rescue the pipes, yes. Punish the leaks. Close the loophole that rewards the fall. Because trust, real, durable trust, only lives where risk and responsibility share the same address. Imagine a wedding ring that doubles as a mute button. Slip it on, and suddenly the person who knows your secrets can't be forced to spill them. Sounds like a magic trick, right? Here's the truth behind the so-called marriage loophole. The law gives spouses a special kind of silence. But it's not a blanket of invisibility. It's more like two different umbrellas, and each one has holes. First umbrella, the testimonial shield. In many places, a spouse can refuse to take the stand against the other in a criminal case. Keyword, refuse. It's their choice, not yours. And the shield only works while the marriage is alive. Divorce, separation, a breakup that's basically a breakup. That umbrella snaps shut. So planning a quick ceremony just to dodge testimony sounds clever, until you realize the power sits with the person on the stand, not the person in the hot seat. Second umbrella, the communications shield. This one protects private words shared during the marriage. The idea is simple. If you confess in confidence to your spouse, the law treats that as sacred. But let's slow down. It only covers genuine private communications, made while you're actually married. Whispered plans before the wedding. Not covered. Things you did out in the open where others could see or hear. Not covered. Physical evidence, receipts, text messages to someone else, surveillance footage. None of that gets magically wiped because you said, "I do." And here's the twist that catches people. Big exceptions. If the alleged harm is against your spouse or your kids, that shield can tear wide open. If you're both involved in planning or committing a crime, think of it like the law's version of no honor among co-conspirators. The protection can vanish there too. Love doesn't launder evidence. A vow doesn't erase a paper trail. So is marriage a loophole? It's more of a narrow doorway. walk through exactly right. And yes, it can keep certain words from being forced into the open. Walk even a little off the line, and the doorway shuts fast. Ask yourself this: would a hurried wedding stop a detective from pulling phone records? Could a private whisper outrun a camera, a neighbour, a bank statement? What happens when your spouse decides their own freedom matters more than your secret? The law isn't trying to help anyone get away with it. It's trying to protect intimacy, those honest, vulnerable conversations that make a marriage real. But when crime enters the room, that intimacy doesn't act like a shield. It becomes a spotlight, drawing attention to what the law will and won't allow to stay hidden. So yes, there's a marriage protection. It's precise, fragile, and easy to misunderstand. If you're banking on it as an escape hatch, that's a bet against evidence, against exceptions, and against human nature. And those are the kinds of bets that break, no matter how shiny the ring. Ever heard the ocean described as a loophole with waves? Sounds daring, until you learn how the sea actually works. First, that phrase, international waters, gets thrown around like a magic shield. It isn't. From the shoreline out to about 12 nautical miles, you're in a country's home turf. Step past that line, and yes, you're on the high seas, but the law doesn't fall overboard. It just switches captains. Here's the anchor. One ship, one flag. The flag on the stern isn't decoration. It's a legal address. A ship is treated like a floating slice of the country it's registered in, so the flag state's laws go with it. Commit a crime out there, and the flag state can claim you. And it doesn't stop there. Your own nationality can pull you in. The victim's nationality can pull you in. The place the ship left, or the port it's heading to, may pull you in too. Think of it like overlapping spotlights on a dark stage. Sooner or later, one finds your face. What about cruise ships? Many fly flags from countries known for easy registration, which makes people think, loophole. But if there's a tie, say a victim or suspect is from a big enforcement country, or the ship is sailing to a major port, agents can meet the ship at sea or dock. There's a reason modern vessels have cameras everywhere and tight passenger lists. The sea is big. The paper trail is bigger. Pirates. Different story. Piracy is the rare, everyone has jurisdiction crime. If you're out there robbing ships, any state can grab you. And if a vessel sails with no valid flag, that's like driving a car with no plates. It's an open invitation to board. You might ask, what about a clever plan in the dead of night? Here's the twist. Evidence at sea travels fast now. Ships ping their locations. Satellites see more than you think. Crews log everything. The master of a vessel can detain suspects, secure cabins, and call ahead. Hot pursuit can even extend a coastal chase out past the line when a crime starts in territorial waters. Distance buys hours, not impunity. Are there weak spots? Sure. Flags of convenience can mean slower responses. Jurisdictions argue. By the time a ship reaches port, witnesses may have scattered, memories fade, and evidence gets salty. Those delays are the real loopholes. Not an absence of law, but the friction of distance and paperwork. And yet, once jurisdictions lock in, cases move. They just move like the sea, steady, relentless. So, can someone get away with murder out there? People try. Will the ocean protect them? No. The ocean doesn't choose sides. Multiple laws do. If you picture the high seas as a lawless void, swap that image for a chessboard that stretches to the horizon. Every move leaves a trace. Every square belongs to someone. And every piece, flag, nationality, port, can still put you in check. That's the real secret of maritime law. It may feel silent out there, but the rules are louder than the waves. Picture two doors, same courtroom, same charge, different keys. One key is a check with a smile. The other is a plastic bin for your belt and your hope. You can feel the tilt before anyone says your name. Let's reframe what bail really buys. Not innocence, but time. Time to sleep in your own bed. Time to sit with your lawyer, not a guard. Time to keep a job, hold a family together, and walk into court from the front door, not the side elevator in cuffs. That's the real currency. And when time is on your side, every decision gets easier. Here's what it looks like. Two friends, same messy night, same charge. Jay calls a bondsman, signs, breathes, goes home. The next morning, he's at work, sipping coffee, texting his attorney. Miguel sits. He watches the afternoon slide into evening and then into another morning. He worries about his kid at school, his mum's rent, his boss who won't keep the shift open forever. After a week, a deal appears. It's not good. It's not fair. It is, however, a door that opens right now. And that's the trick. When waiting costs everything, the worst option starts to look like relief. Psychologically, scarcity narrows your world. When you're counting hours in a cell, you're not weighing long-term strategy. You're grabbing for air. Time pressure doesn't just change outcomes. It changes what reasonable even feels like. Buy time, and you buy options. Buy options, and you buy leverage. That leverage touches everything. How carefully evidence gets reviewed, how much confidence you carry into a hearing, how willing you are to push for the truth rather than settle for the exit. And here's the twist. We talk about bail like it's a promise. Show up to court, and you get your money back. But in practice, it's more like a filter. Those with cash pass through to a life that keeps moving. Those without cash get stuck, and the stillness starts to punish them before any verdict is spoken. That's not guilt or innocence. That's gravity. So what exactly is wealth buying? It's buying the luxury to wait at home while the process drags on. It's buying the mental space to think clearly, to meet with counsel, to gather records, to call in favours, without the clock chewing through your job, your apartment, your relationships. It's buying a version of the same case that plays out on a softer timeline with better choices at every turn. And once you see that, you can't unsee it. Is justice about the facts or about who can afford to stay free long enough to present them? Is innocent until proven guilty a principle or a perk with a price tag? Here's the human part. People don't just need fairness in the outcome. They need fairness in the waiting. The waiting is where your life is held, where your story hardens, where your courage either grows or folds. When freedom functions like a subscription and your bank account decides whether you can renew, the system's promise rings hollow. The story was rigged by time from the start. If we care about justice, we have to care about the space between arrest and verdict, the weeks and months where power hides. Because when wealth buys bail, it doesn't just open a door, it tilts the hallway, and everyone else is walking uphill. You can't hack justice with a signature, but people try. Let's talk about NDAs. Non-disclosure agreements sound airtight. Fancy letterhead, legal jargon, a signature at the bottom. Silent, sealed, done. That's the illusion. In reality, an NDA is a tool with limits. It's meant to protect real secrets, like a recipe, a prototype, a business plan. It's not a magic blanket that hides wrongdoing. If someone waves an NDA like a wand and says, "You can't talk about this harm," here's the truth. Harm isn't a trade secret. Can an NDA stop a witness from speaking about a crime? No. Take a breath and sit with that. No contract can cancel the law. If a court issues a subpoena, you can be required to testify. If authorities ask about a crime, you can talk. Clauses that try to ban reporting of illegal acts are usually unenforceable because public safety beats private silence. So why do NDAs feel so scary? Power and pressure. The document looks official. The penalties sound huge. Lawyers are CC'd. You're told to hush or else. And that pressure works. People freeze, delay, doubt themselves. That's the chilling effect. Not legal force, psychological force. Here's the twist. Using money or threats to buy silence about a crime can flip the script entirely. That can look like witness tampering. It can look like obstruction. The very attempt to gag can become evidence of guilt. What about the grey areas, messy workplaces, toxic bosses, off-the-books deals? An NDA might appear alongside a severance release or a settlement. You see phrases like any and all, lifetime silence, hefty penalties, no carve-outs. That's not protection, that's a muzzle. Look for daylight. Carve-outs matter. Language that says you can report to law enforcement, regulators, or a court if asked. Those lines are your oxygen. Without them, you're being asked to lock your voice in a box and throw away the key. If someone shoves an NDA across the table and says, "Sign now," pause. Ask questions. What exactly is confidential? For how long? What happens if you're subpoenaed? Can you speak to a therapist, a spouse, an attorney? If the answers are vague, notice that. Vagueness is where silence grows. And if you've already signed, you still have rights. A contract can't erase the law. You can talk to your own lawyer. You can go to the authorities about crimes. You can tell the truth under oath. People will try to convince you otherwise. That doesn't make it real. NDAs aren't evil by default. Used right, they protect innovation and privacy. Used wrong, they become a spotlight on fear. That's the tell. When the goal is safety, terms are clear. When the goal is silence, everything gets foggy. Power loves a quiet room. But the truth is loud. It shows up in patterns, in documents, in witnesses who decide they won't be erased. So if someone dangles a contract to keep you quiet about harm, remember this simple line. A signature can't bury the truth. And silence isn't the same as safety. The strangest power in a courtroom doesn't sit in the judge's chair. It lives in the quiet glance between jurors, in the moment someone thinks, that law might be clear, but this verdict wouldn't be right. That's jury nullification, not a legal trick, not a magic word, just 12 citizens deciding that applying a law, in this case, would be unjust. They still hear the evidence, they still weigh the facts, but when conscience and statute collide, they can choose to acquit. Picture it. 12 people, fluorescent lights humming, a stack of instructions on the table. The law says one thing. The story in front of them says another. A hand hovers over the ballot. Someone clears their throat. "I know what the rule says," they whisper, "but does this fit what's fair?" And the room gets very, very still. Here's the twist. Jury nullification is both a safety valve and a spark. It can prevent a rigid law from crushing a human being. It can also let personal bias masquerade as mercy. That tension is why judges rarely spotlight it, why lawyers dance around it, and why jurors feel its weight without anyone naming it out loud. Psychologically, we flip between two gears when stakes are high: rule following and moral intuition. When those gears grind, people crave two things: fairness and autonomy, the sense that their judgment actually matters. When they feel heard and trusted, they're more open to careful, ethical choices, not less. So what's the heartbeat of this power? It isn't rebellion for the thrill of it. It's responsibility. It's the oldest civic promise. Laws should serve people, not the other way around. But responsibility cuts both ways. Mercy without standards is chaos. Rules without mercy become cruelty with paperwork. If you've ever felt that knot in your stomach, when the right answer doesn't feel right, you already know the terrain. The path through it isn't loud. It's patient. Ask better questions. What harm would this verdict repair? What harm might it create? Are we reacting to fear or reaching for justice? Leave a breath after each question. Let it land. Then keep listening. Here's a simple image to hold on to. Think of the law as a map and a jury as hikers on the ground. Maps are crucial. They keep you oriented. But if the map shows a bridge that washed out last winter, you don't march off the edge. You look up. You reroute. You still aim for the destination, justice. You just refuse to pretend the broken bridge is safe. Some call that defiance. Others call it courage. The truth lives in the discipline behind the choice. Slow down. Weigh the story. Name your bias. Notice the pressure. Then decide, together, with care. Because the real power of a jury isn't the ability to ignore the law. It's the duty to uphold something deeper. A shared sense of human worth, guided by rules, tempered by conscience, and chosen with eyes wide open. And that choice, spoken softly in a room of 12, can echo for years. Ever held a pen over a claim form and felt a tiny tremor in your hand? Like your own pulse is tapping out a warning you don't want to hear? That's where insurance fraud often starts. Not with a mastermind plan, with a shrug, with a thought like, it's just a little extra, and the company's massive anyway. That story feels harmless, even clever, but it's a trap dressed up like a shortcut. Here's the quiet truth. Insurance exists to catch us when the floor gives out. Exploiting it pokes holes in that safety net. For everyone. Premiums inch up, trust thins out, and when disaster actually hits, the whole system is a little weaker than yesterday. So why do people cross the line? 3 flavors show up again and again: pressure, entitlement, and opportunity. Pressure sounds like, I need this to get by. Entitlement whispers, they owe me. Opportunity tells a slick lie. No one will notice. And here's the twist. Every one of those voices is lying to you. Think about the promise behind a payout. It's not free money. It's a promise kept by millions who pay in good faith. When that promise gets gamed, it pushes the honest folks to foot the bill. And the system pushes back. Hard. You felt it already. Those follow-up calls, the request for extra medical records, the photos, the receipts. Insurers don't just write checks. They build patterns. They compare dates, cross-reference vendors, look for repeat mechanics, shared addresses, recycled wording. A single, harmless embellishment doesn't live alone for long. It links up. What happens when it links up? Investigators step in, not with drama, just patience. They pull threads until the sweater comes apart. Interviews get recorded. Statements are checked against timestamps and location data. And when stories wobble, even a little, the wobble becomes the story. Is that worth it? Here's the part people don't picture: the aftermath. Not just the legal trouble, though that's real. Fines, restitution, sometimes prison. It's the slow burn after. Losing work, losing licenses, losing relationships because trust, once cracked, doesn't snap back clean. You carry the label, and it follows you. But there's a stronger story to tell. The one where you sit with the uncomfortable thing, the bill you didn't expect, the accident that upended everything, and you choose the long road. You document honestly. You ask questions. You keep every scrap of proof, even when it's tedious. You take the legitimate help that exists, and you let the system show up the way it's meant to. If you're tempted, press pause. What's the cost to your future name? Who pays when you think no one's paying? And what would it feel like to walk into tomorrow with nothing to hide? Courage isn't loud. It's the quiet decision to tell the truth when a lie would be easy. It's choosing integrity over the illusion of a quick win. It's saying no to the little fraud that grows teeth. That's how you keep your promise and help keep the safety net strong for the day you truly need it. There's a quiet bell only one person can ring, and when it tolls, locked doors click open. That bell is the power to pardon. One signature, one breath held, and a conviction that took months, maybe years, can vanish like smoke. Not because the facts changed, because the leader said so. Sounds dramatic, right? It is. A pardon is meant to be mercy made official. When a jury gets it wrong, when a sentence goes too far, when time has done what bars could not. It's the system admitting, softly, that justice needs room to bend. But here's the twist. That bend can turn into a loophole big enough to drive a convoy through. Because a pardon doesn't argue in court. It doesn't need to. It just overrides. And yes, in many places, it can touch the heaviest crimes, even the ones that make headlines and break hearts. So what actually happens? Think of 3 levers. A pardon wipes the slate clean. A commutation shortens a sentence, but leaves the guilt in place. An amnesty throws a blanket over a whole group at once, usually after chaos, to close a chapter fast. Each lever is legal. Each lever can heal. And each one can be used to protect friends, reward loyalty, or quiet a scandal. Midnight signatures, holiday drops, final days in office when the phones ring less and the cameras turn away. That's when the bell rings loudest. And when it does, the official line is simple. It's lawful. It's constitutional. It's tradition. All true. That's why it's a loophole, not a heist. The door swings because it was built to. Some places try guardrails, advisory boards, public lists, limits on which crimes qualify, counter-signatures. But the core remains. Extraordinary power in a single pen. A pen that can free a soldier and enrage a widow. That can right a wrong, or rewrite it. Is mercy still mercy if it's only for the well-connected? Is forgiveness still noble if it sidesteps the people who suffered? Is a nation safer when old wounds are closed, or when they're cleaned first? Those questions don't get answered in court. They get answered by us, slowly, loudly, and sometimes too late. Because a pardon is more than a legal act. It's a story we choose to tell about who deserves another chance. So listen for the bell. When you hear it, ask why it rang. Ask who waited for it, and who never got close enough to hear. The power is real. The consequences are real. And the line between mercy and manipulation is thinner than anyone wants to admit. In the end, a leader's pen can unlock a cell, or lock in a legacy. The ink looks the same either way. The meaning lives in what we're willing to accept, and what we're brave enough to refuse. Picture a passport sliding across a polished desk. No childhood memories, no aunties, no hometown, just a signature and a smile. It feels like a magic trick, a new identity conjured from an investment and a stamp. People call it Loophole Citizenship. The quieter label is citizenship by investment. You put money into a country's bonds, a fund, maybe approved real estate, and in return, you're offered a passport. On paper, it's clean. Countries want capital. Investors want mobility and a backup plan. Everyone shakes hands. But here's the part that gets lost in the whispers. It isn't a cheat code. Not for taxes, not for travel, and definitely not for crime. You'll hear the sales pitch: greater freedom, fast processing, instant global access. Sounds slick. Still, there's a lot between the brochure and the border. There are background checks, source of funds reviews, interviews, sometimes months of waiting, and then years of renewal obligations. It's not the Wild West. If it looks like a shortcut, it usually has guardrails you can't see from the ad. And that dark fantasy, could a second passport make you untouchable? No, laws don't bend that easily. Extradition treaties cross oceans. Bank compliance follows names, addresses, and transaction trails. Interpol does not care how many colours your passport comes in. If your plan is to outrun accountability, that plan has holes. A booklet doesn't cancel a warrant, and a new flag won't unring a siren. So, what is the real draw? Optionality, a second home base if one door closes, the chance to move for school, work, or safety without begging for a visa. It's a form of insurance, like keeping a spare key under the doormat. Handy when you're locked out. Useless if you're breaking in. There are trade-offs. New rights come with new duties. Tax reporting, local rules, residency expectations that aren't printed on the cover. Reputations swing. A program that looks prestigious today can face scandal tomorrow, and you carry that baggage at every airport counter. If a country tightens rules or revokes sloppy approvals, the shine fades fast. There's also the human part. Citizenship is more than paper. It's obligations, stories, a place you'll defend when it's criticised. If you anchor it only to money, it can feel hollow. If you root it in contribution, time, community, respect, it can feel earned, even if you arrive through an investment door. So ask yourself, carefully, are you buying a passport or buying peace of mind? Are you expanding your world or trying to disappear from it? And here's the quiet truth. Security isn't the same as secrecy. Mobility isn't invisibility. Courage isn't found in a loophole. It's found in how you live once you step through it. If you want a second passport for resilience, be honest, be diligent, be patient. If you want it to dodge consequences, that paper shield won't stop handcuffs. In the end, a passport is a promise to a place, to a people, to your future self. Make sure the promise you're buying is one you're willing to keep. Imagine a sign that says no parking, and right beneath it, a quieter sign that basically says, it'll cost you a little. You know what happens next. The rule stops being a rule and turns into a price tag. Not a boundary, a bargain. That's the heart of a slap on the wrist fine. When the penalty is cheaper than compliance, it isn't punishment anymore, it's a purchase. And here's the twist. The moment we treat a consequence like a fee, we start calculating, not choosing. Take a simple example. A company can either fix a problem the right way, which takes time, people, and real money, or it can keep shipping, keep selling, and pay a small penalty later. If the math says the fee is lighter than the fix, The spreadsheet points one way, not because it's right, but because it's cheaper. You've seen the smaller versions of this. A crowded lot, a quick errand, a ticket that costs less than the garage across the street. The choice shifts. It's not, should I follow the rule? It becomes, is the charge worth it? That tiny shift changes everything. It reframes a moral line into a market decision. And once it's a transaction, the behavior spreads. Psychologically, this matters. When we put a price on harm, we give permission to weigh it like a product. Guilt fades behind a receipt. Responsibility turns into risk management. And the story we tell ourselves changes from, I did the wrong thing, to, I paid for the right to do it. Now some people think, so what? Money is a language everyone understands. True. But listen to what that language says. It tells the careful person, the honest team, the long-term thinker, you're a sucker for doing it the hard way. It tells the corner cutter, you're savvy. Over time, the culture drifts. Good actors feel punished. Bad actors feel efficient. So how do you flip it back? Make the cost of non-compliance heavier than the shortcut. Not just a little heavier, meaningfully heavier, and certain. Raise the odds, raise the stakes, and make the clean path the easy path. But notice this, it's not only about size, it's about structure. A penalty that scales with impact. A consequence that grows with repeats. A rule that doesn't whisper, it speaks in a voice you can't ignore. Here's the twist. The point isn't to crush people, it's to realign the math with our values. Ask yourself, if the fine is just the fee, what behavior are we buying more of? Set the incentives so the right thing and the smart thing point in the same direction. When penalties stop being prices and start being boundaries again, something quiet and powerful happens. People stop negotiating with their conscience and start listening to it. That's when slap on the wrist stops being a strategy and starts being a story we've outgrown. Picture this. You ship a pallet of goods on Monday. The invoice is due in 30 days, and by Friday, your customer files a petition, and your payment just evaporates. Not because they vanished, but because a law flipped the board and reset the game. Here's the quiet switch that gets pulled. The moment a company files for Chapter 11, an automatic stay drops like a curtain. Lawsuits pause. Collection calls stop. That overdue bill you were counting on, frozen in place. It feels like a magic trick. Waiver form, debts disappear. But it's really a rulebook move with very real teeth. Then comes the reshuffle. In restructuring, the company sorts its IOUs into priority lines. Employees and taxes are closer to the front. Banks with collateral are up there too. Unsecured folks, the vendors, the small partners, the hopefuls, often get what's left. Sometimes pennies, sometimes nothing. That's how debts seem to vanish. They don't float away. They're pushed down a ladder until the ladder ends. And there's another twist, the part that sounds like an escape hatch. The company can sell its good assets fast to a new entity. A clean slate with a familiar face. Newco buys the brand, the customer list, the tech, even the office chairs. Oldco keeps the claims, the lawsuits, the mess. Same building, same people, new name tag. It's called a Section 363 sale. In plain English, move the furniture to the lifeboat, let the sinking ship carry the water. Contracts get a haircut too. Costly lease. Rejected. Lopsided agreement. Renegotiated. The court can bless a cram down, a plan that forces unhappy creditors to accept less. if the math and the law line up. Meanwhile, a special kind of lender steps in with fresh cash called DIP financing. They jump to the head of the line because without oxygen, there's no patient. High risk, high priority, and everyone else waits. Sounds unfair? It depends where you're standing. If you're a supplier, it's a gut punch. If you're an employee, it might be the only path to keep the lights on. If you're a community, you trade a clean slate for a chance at jobs tomorrow. If you're management, you may even keep your seat, at least for a while. That's why it can feel like debts vanish overnight. The pain is redistributed, not erased. So what do you watch for? Patterns. A company paying certain partners early, then going quiet. A landlord suddenly reconsidering terms. Rumours of a bridging loan with weird protections. Those are tremors before the filing. And if you're the one doing business with them, build cushions, diversify your customer base, read the default clauses, and listen for the word forbearance. It's code for the clock is ticking. Corporate bankruptcy isn't a magic wand, it's a controlled burn. It sacrifices dry brush to save the forest, but someone still feels the heat. When it works, a business emerges smaller, lighter, and alive. When it doesn't, Chapter 7 turns the lights off for good. Overnight? Not exactly. But when the gavel falls, it can feel like it. That's the power, and the price, of the loopholes built into the system. Picture a passport stamp that works like a force field, not magic, law. You walk into a foreign country, and the rules still apply, just not always the local ones. That's foreign immunity, and it's the quiet shield officials carry when they work abroad. Sounds like a cheat code, right? Here's the twist. It was built to keep governments talking, even when tensions run high. Diplomats, consular staff, visiting leaders, people the state depends on, need room to operate without fear of harassment or political payback. Immunity is that breathing space. But is it a golden ticket? Not exactly. There are flavors. Diplomats usually get the strongest shield, criminal and civil, because their job lives in the line of political fire. Consular officials get a narrower umbrella, mostly for acts done in the course of duty. Soldiers sent overseas work under agreements that split power between the host country and the home country. And heads of state carry a personal cloak while in office. Then, when they leave, it shrinks to cover only official acts. So what happens if someone abuses that shield? First, the host nation can slam the door. Persona non grata. Out, gone. Bags, packed. That doesn't sound like jail, but it's not nothing. Careers end that way. Second, the home country can waive immunity. It's rare, but it happens, especially when the pressure is intense and the facts are ugly. And third, accountability can come back around at home. Immunity travels with you abroad. It doesn't erase your laws back home. But what about truly grave crimes? Some lines are so bright that the law itself pushes back. Atrocities, war crimes, crimes against humanity. That's where the promise of immunity meets the demand for justice. Courts and treaties wrestle with those edges every time history forces the issue. The shield was never meant to be a license. It was meant to keep the conversation alive. Still, that gap between what people think it is and what it actually does creates a lot of anger. Families see a car crash, or a fight gone wrong, or something worse, and they hear the word immunity. It feels like power without consequence. But notice this, consequences don't disappear. They just shift. They move from one courtroom to another, from this city to that capital, from public outrage today to legal action tomorrow. So, can someone get away with it? Sometimes, for a while. Politics complicates everything. Evidence can be messy across borders. Countries protect their own. That's real. And it's also why transparency matters, why waivers matter, why treaties have pressure valves built in. The cleanest way to see it is like this. Immunity isn't a pardon. It's a promise. Keep the channels open. Keep the officials safe. And when harm happens, find the right doorway to accountability. Maybe not here, maybe not now, but somewhere the law can still speak. A shield, not an invisibility cloak. A pause, not an absolution. And yes, the difference matters. Whispered plans make the loudest noise in a courtroom. Not because anyone's talking, because silence, well placed, can shake the walls. Here's the myth. Stay quiet, dodge questions, and you slip past accountability. Here's the reality. Silence is a tool, not a magic key. Use it, and the court uses something back. Contempt of court sounds dramatic, but it's simple. It's the judge saying, obey the order or face consequences. There are two flavors. Criminal contempt punishes past defiance. Civil contempt tries to force compliance, like a pressure valve that tightens until you do the thing you're refusing to do. That's why people think they found a loophole. If you say nothing, the valve can't squeeze a confession out of you. But there's a line between a right and a dodge. The right to stay silent, especially to avoid self-incrimination, is real. In a criminal case, your silence can't be used as proof against you. In a civil battle, though, the silence can boomerang. The court can draw an adverse inference. Same silence, different result. That's the first twist. Second twist, I can't versus I won't. If a person truly can't comply with an order, because the files are gone, the password's lost, the money doesn't exist, courts aren't supposed to jail someone for the impossible. That's not a loophole. That's fairness. But say can't when the judge believes you mean won't, and the walls close in. And here's the lever most people don't see. If the silence is about self-incrimination, the court can cut the cord by granting immunity. Use immunity says, your words can't be used against you later. Once that kicks in, the right to stay quiet fades, and refusing to answer can land you in contempt. The pressure shifts. You may sit and sit and sit, coercive jail, until the proceeding ends or you finally speak. It's not forever, but it's not nothing. What about slippery answers? I don't recall isn't contempt if it's true. If it's a lie, that's perjury, a bigger fire. Vague court orders. Those are shaky too. If the order isn't clear, contempt becomes harder to prove. Again, not a loophole, just the law insisting on clarity before it punishes. So, can silence let someone get away with murder? It can stall. It can frustrate. It can make proof harder, witnesses tougher, timelines longer. But silence comes with a bill. Fines, confinement, and sometimes immunity that pries the lid off anyway. It's a shield with weight, not an invisibility cloak. The real question is different. What are you willing to trade for that quiet? Time, money, control. Because the judge has tools too, and when silence becomes strategy, the system pushes back. Not always cleanly, not always quickly, but it pushes. And sooner or later, that pressure needs somewhere to go. The sign on the door says, open. Inside, there's air. No desks, no phones, no people. Just a name on paper and a key that unlocks nothing. That's the trick of a shell company. It looks like a business. It sounds like a business. but it's really a mask. Here's how the mask works. A shell company has no real operations, no product, no payroll. It exists to hold money, move money, or hide who's behind the money. On the surface, it's boring paperwork. Behind the scenes, it's a disappearing act. Money goes in with a name attached. Money comes out with a name stripped clean. Imagine a dirty payment, cash from a bribe, a kickback, a scam. You slide it into a company that owns nothing. That shell is owned by another company, which is owned by yet another. A chain of mirrors. By the time the money lands somewhere safe, the original face is lost in the reflections. If someone asks who owns the last company, the answer is another company. If they ask who signs for that one, you point to a stranger who rents out signatures by the dozen. The paperwork checks out. The person doesn't even know the story behind the cash. Sounds wild, right? But it's ordinary. Incorporations can be done in minutes. A registered address can be a mailbox. A director can be a name that appears on hundreds of entities spread across different countries. And here's the twist. This isn't just offshore. Some of these shells sit quietly in the same city where the money was stolen, hiding in plain sight. So what crimes fit behind a hollow door like this? Money laundering for sure. Fake invoices to justify transfers. Real estate bought with anonymous funds. Pushing prices up while no one knows who's behind the deed. Sanctions dodged by slipping through an alias. Fraud layered so deeply that when victims go looking, they find only paper, and the paper says everything's fine. Who's accountable when the money goes missing? Who do you charge when the owner is a ghost? That's the dark beauty of the shell. It separates the crime from the criminal with legal distance. It turns accountability into a maze, and every turn looks legitimate. Checks and licenses and stamped forms. Perform theatre meant to comfort anyone who doesn't pull the curtain. Now, not every shell is evil. Some exist for privacy or logistics. But secrecy is the soil where bad money grows fast. When no one can see the beneficial owner, the real person in control, the door is open to harm. Communities lose schools and clinics because tax money is siphoned away. Families get priced out by anonymous buyers. Victims of fraud watch the trail go cold at a rented mailbox. So, when you hear a glossy name with no faces attached, pause. Ask the simplest question. Who's really in charge? If the answer circles back to silence, that silence is the point. It's not an absence. It's cover. And cover is all a shell needs to hide something very real. Ever seen a city hold up an open hand and say, "Easy, locals first"? That's the quiet pulse behind sanctuary cities. Not a secret tunnel, not a magic cloak. More like a boundary line drawn in pencil, with room to think, breathe, and decide. Here's the simple idea. A sanctuary city chooses how it uses its time, money, and people. It focuses on local safety, investigating crimes, protecting families, keeping schools and clinics open, while keeping some distance from federal immigration tasks. Think of it like an umbrella in a heavy storm. The umbrella doesn't stop the rain from existing. It just means you're choosing how to stay dry as you move down the street. And here's the reframe. It's not about ignoring laws. It's about which duties belong where, and who gets to call the play when two different rule books collide. Cities aren't saying yes to chaos. They're saying this is our lane, and we'll drive it. Picture a traffic stop. Tail light out. An officer checks for local warrants, handles the citation, and if there's a serious crime, that's handled. If not, they don't hold someone longer just because another agency wants them to wait around. That's the boundary. Same spirit inside a clinic or a school. Staff help the person in front of them without turning a health visit into a status investigation. The goal is simple. People show up sooner, report crimes earlier, and trust grows because the door to help isn't booby-trapped. Does that mean someone can do anything and walk away? No. If there's a violent crime, it's prosecuted. If there's a judge's warrant, it's acted on. Federal agents can still do federal work. A sanctuary policy doesn't erase consequences. It just stops local hands from being deputized by default. Why do cities do this? Because trust beats fear when you're trying to keep people safe. When folks believe the person in uniform is there to protect, not profile, they talk, they testify, they ask for help before things erupt. Psychologically, that feeling of safety lowers defenses and opens the conversation. It's the difference between someone being answered and someone being understood. And here's the twist most people miss. A sanctuary isn't only a shield, it's also a signal. It says to neighbours, to small business owners, to kids walking into class, you're seen here for what you're doing today, not reduced to a label. That signal turns strangers into participants. It brings problems above the surface, where they can be handled in daylight. You can disagree on policy. You can push for stricter lines or softer ones. But listen for the heartbeat under the headline. Sanctuary cities aren't a loophole to slip past justice. They're a choice about where local power starts and where it stops, so the people who live there feel safe enough to step forward. Shielded from federal reach, yes, but never shielded from responsibility. A shadow on the sidewalk, a shout, then silence, and a phrase that decides the rest. Stand your ground. Sounds simple. If you're somewhere you're allowed to be, and you reasonably believe you're in danger of death or serious harm, you can meet force with force. No duty to back away first. No requirement to run. It promises protection when your options shrink to one. But here's the twist. The whole thing turns on two slippery words, reasonable and fear. And those words stretch, depending on who's defining them, what they saw, and what they believed in the moment. Reasonable to whom? Imagine you're in a dim parking lot. A stranger moves toward you fast, talking loud, hands half hidden by a hoodie. Your heart sprints. Your brain compresses seconds into flashes. You act because you think you might not get another chance. Later, you learn he wanted directions, or he wanted your wallet, or he wanted to hurt you. 3 different stories. 1 decision. Now flip it. 2 neighbours arguing over noise. The door slams, tempers spike, a hand goes to a pocket. Is it a phone or a weapon? At normal speed, it's obvious. In fear speed, it's a blur. And the law, in many places, lets that blur count as justification if a jury believes your fear was reasonable. Here's the controversy people feel in their bones. When the survivor's story is the only story, the survivor's words shape the frame. That's not proof of guilt or innocence, it's just gravity. And gravity pulls hard. Bias can dress up as caution. Assumptions can look like instincts. We call it self-defense, but sometimes we're defending our picture of the world more than our life. So what was the original idea? Protect people who can't safely retreat. It's meant for the cornered, the trapped, the outmatched. That's the purpose. But expanded too far, it mixes split-second judgment with permission to escalate, and that's where the loopholes appear. Someone can provoke, then claim fear. Someone can refuse to step back, then call it courage. The line between defense and dominance starts to blur, and when the line blurs, accountability thins. What do we do with that? Not slogans, not easy villains, just two grounding questions we can carry into policy, into juries, into culture. Could a step back have kept someone alive without putting anyone in greater danger? Would a calm person, outside the heat of that moment, still see lethal force as the only choice? If the answer is yes, that's what these laws were meant to protect. If the answer is no, then the shield is hiding a sword, and we should say so clearly. Courage isn't always standing your ground. Sometimes it's creating space. Sometimes it's shifting your weight, lowering your voice, letting a second pass so your brain can catch up to your body. That pause can feel like weakness in the moment. It's not. It's control. It's care. It's choosing a future where more of us get to go home. Because at the end, the point isn't winning a confrontation. It's keeping people alive and keeping justice honest enough to tell the difference. Picture this. You tap agree. Your screen flashes green and, quietly, the courthouse doors swing shut behind you. That's the power of an arbitration clause. It's a line buried in the fine print that says, if there's a dispute, you won't go to a public courtroom with a judge and a jury. You'll go to a private room, sometimes virtual, and your case will be decided by an arbitrator. One person, often a lawyer or a retired judge, who hears both sides and makes a binding call. Why do companies love it? Speed, cost, control. Arbitration moves faster, it's usually cheaper, and it keeps messy stories out of public view. No transcripts, no jury. Often, strict confidentiality. For them, fewer headlines. For you, fewer tools. Sounds efficient, right? Here's the twist. Efficiency can come with trade-offs. Discovery, the process of getting documents and testimony, can be limited. Appeals are rare. And when many people have small but similar claims, those claims might be split apart because the clause blocks class actions. Think of it like scattering a loud crowd into quiet rooms. Suddenly, the noise is gone, and so is the leverage. How do you agree to this without noticing? By clicking accept. Signing a new phone contract, joining a gym, buying a product, scheduling a ride, downloading an app. So many everyday steps hide that sentence. You're not just buying a thing. You're trading away a path to court. Is arbitration always bad? Not necessarily. It can truly be faster. It can resolve a straightforward dispute without dragging on for years. If you want a quick decision, that might be a relief. But ask yourself, do you want your claim kept private when a public record might pressure change? Do you want one decider or a jury of peers? Do you want a chance to appeal if something feels off? If you're wondering how to spot these clauses, listen for phrases like binding arbitration, waiver of jury trial, and class action waiver. You might see references to organisations like AAA or JAMS that administer the process. If those words pop up, you're not walking toward a courthouse. You're stepping into a private forum. So what can you do? First, read. Just the dispute section. It's often only a few lines. Second, some agreements let you opt out within a set window, sometimes a few weeks, by sending an email or a letter. It's not advertised, but it's there. Third, look for exceptions. Many clauses allow small claims court, which can be simple, fast, and public. And if you're already in a conflict, ask whether the company will waive arbitration for your case. They might say no, but they might say yes. Here's the big idea. The strongest power in an arbitration clause isn't legal language, it's invisibility. When you see it, you get choices. When you don't, Your choices vanish. Keep your eyes open. Read the dispute section. Use the opt-out if it matters to you. And remember, the most dangerous contract term is the one you never notice until you need it. The only time a confession feels like a key is when it opens a door instead of a cell. Imagine someone admits everything, breathes out, and, somehow, walks free. Not a movie twist. An immunity deal. Here's the quiet bargain at the heart of it. Prosecutors want the bigger story, the wider web, the person higher up the ladder. And sometimes, the only way to get there is to trade what the system wants least, punishment, for what it needs most, the whole truth. It sounds upside down. It is. But it happens. An immunity deal is a promise. Tell us what happened. Tell us who did what. And we won't use this to bury you. Sometimes it's total protection, the kind that makes charges disappear like smoke. Other times, it's narrower. Your words can't be used against you, but if there's other proof, you're still on the hook. It's like handing over the map, but keeping your fingerprints off the paper. Why would the state ever say yes? Because testimony is leverage. A small fish can flip on a shark. A driver can paint the picture the camera's missed. A co-conspirator can unlock motive, timing, and intent. Those little details that turn suspicion into a story a jury believes. And why would a criminal ever risk it? Because the alternative is worse. Because the Fifth Amendment won't protect you forever if the evidence piles up. Because a deal, even an imperfect one, might be the only bridge between the life you're trapped in and the life you might still have. But here's the catch. There's always a catch. The deal lives or dies on one word: truth. Lie once, even a little, and the safety net snaps. Every promise vanishes. Perjury is a new problem, and the old case comes roaring back. And if the state can find evidence without your confession, they can still use that. You don't get a magic shield. You get a very specific umbrella, and it only covers what it covers. So, picture the moral knot. A person who pulled the trigger tells the story that brings down a boss. The shooter might get a walk. The boss might get decades. Is that justice? Or is it strategy? The courtroom isn't a cathedral of purity. It's a marketplace of proof. Deals get traded. Pain gets weighed. And sometimes the path to the most punishment runs through the unlikeliest witness, one with blood on their hands and a reason to talk. If you were the one with the power to offer that deal, would you do it? If you were the one facing time, would you take it? Here's the uncomfortable truth. The system often decides that more truth is worth the price of less punishment. Not always. Not casually. But when the doors are closing and the clock is ticking, someone's story can be the difference between silence and accountability. An immunity deal isn't a cheat code. It's a dangerous bargain. It asks one person to risk everything they know and asks the rest of us to live with the cost. And if you listen closely, you can hear it. The quiet click of that key, turning. Picture this. You land in a quiet airport, no fanfare, no flashing lights, and you feel it in your bones. The chase just stops. No cuffs, no questions. Like you slipped through a crack in the map. Sounds unreal, right? Here's the uncomfortable truth. That crack has a name. It's an extradition gap. Not a magical force field, just places where law, paperwork, and politics don't line up. And in those spaces, some people think they can't be touched. So what creates the gap? Treaties are the big one. Countries make promises to hand people over, but those promises are a patchwork quilt, stitched at different times with different threads. If there's no treaty between two places, you've got a hole. Even when there is a treaty, there are catches. Dual criminality says the act has to be a crime in both places. If it isn't, the door doesn't open. Some countries won't extradite their own citizens. Others draw a hard line at the death penalty or certain sentences. And the old phrase, political offence, it still hangs around, a wide umbrella that can block a handover if the case looks like politics in disguise. Sounds simple. Here's the twist. Safe doesn't stay safe. Government cooperation shifts. New deals get signed. A case can be reframed, not political, just violent. Human rights reviews cut both ways. If the home country improves prison conditions or changes the charge, a refusal can flip to a yes. And there's more. Extradition isn't the only door into a courtroom. Immigration law is a side entrance. Overstay a visa, break a rule, and you can be deported, not extradited, but placed on a plane all the same. Interpol notices aren't arrest warrants, but they're alarms that keep ringing at borders, banks, even phone plans. You might not be seized today, but you're living on a countdown you can't see. Think you can vanish with a new name? Passports expire. Biometrics don't. Money leaves a trail. Friends talk. One routine traffic stop. One curious officer. And the gap narrows to nothing. And here's the part most people miss. Some countries claim the power to try you for serious crimes, no matter where they happened. That's extraterritorial reach. So even if you dodge a flight back, you might still face a courtroom where you stand. So are there places where the math of law and politics makes you hard to grab? Yes, for a while. But you can't be touched is a myth. It's a bet against time, treaties, and change, a flimsy shelter built out of paperwork, the kind of shelter that looks solid, until the wind shifts. If you're hearing this as a playbook, stop. It's not. It's a warning. The map isn't full of safe havens. It's full of moving parts. And the only thing gaps do, eventually, is close. Whisper this with me. Wealth rarely walks through the front door. It slips through side doors, quiet hallways, and yes, a few perfectly legal trapdoors the tax code left open. Want to keep more in the family and less on the government's plate? Start small and steady. Those yearly gifts everyone yawns at, they're a conveyor belt. Give a modest amount each year to as many people as you like, and you shift wealth a little at a time. No alarms, no sirens. Add college savings plans to the mix, and you can front-load years of gifts at once, then let time and compounding do the heavy lifting. It feels slow, but slow is the point. Slow is invisible. Here's a big one people miss. The step-up in basis. Hold appreciated assets until death. And for many, the tax on all that past growth can vanish for your heirs when they inherit. It's like wiping the chalkboard clean. If you've got a mix of assets, think about which ones you spend and which ones you keep. Because the ones you keep may get that reset. Now, trusts. Trusts sound fancy, but they're just containers with rules. A grantor retained annuity trust, call it a GRAT, lets you load in assets that you expect to grow. If they grow faster than the government's assumed rate, that extra growth can pass to your heirs with little or no transfer tax. A spousal lifetime access trust, a SLAT, moves assets out of your estate while your family can still benefit. One hand off the chessboard, the other still guarding the king. Your home? A qualified personal residence trust can freeze the value today, then hand the house to your heirs later at a discount. You keep living there for a set term. After that, The big ticket passes down the hallway, quietly. What about life insurance? Park it in an irrevocable life insurance trust. That way, the payout lands outside your estate. Liquidity for taxes and expenses shows up when your heirs need it most, without swelling the estate itself. And here's the whisper with a wink play. Intra-family loans. You lend at the government's minimum rate, your family invests the funds, and the spread can build wealth outside your estate. Wrap operating assets inside a family partnership or LLC, and you may also qualify for valuation discounts when transferring interests. Smaller value on paper, larger value in reality. That's leverage. If your family tree has branches to spare, layer in generation skipping strategies so the wealth doesn't get taxed at every rung. Think dynasty trust in a friendly state. Think long game. Think control without clenching your fist. This isn't about evasion. It's about design. The code gives you doors. You choose which ones to open. So, ask yourself, which assets should I spend first and which should I pass? Who do I trust to be a trustee? Someone calm, organized, and steady. What could grow faster than the assumptions baked into the rules? Map it. Title it right. Keep records tight. Then review as laws shift. Because they do. Play it smart. Play it early. And let your inheritance move the quiet way. Through the side doors that were built for it. Legally. On purpose. The wildest plea you'll never see on a billboard is whispered in the back of a squad car. Help us. And we help you. Picture this. You're caught. Lights in your eyes. Evidence in the trunk. It feels over. Then a quiet offer slides across the table. You've got something the law wants more than your scalp. Information. Suddenly, guilt becomes currency, and your story turns into a bargaining chip. That chip has a name people say under their breath. Informant status. Become a source. Give the police or prosecutors something they can verify, and the floor under your case moves. Charges can shrink. Sometimes they vanish. Not out of mercy, but out of math. If your tip leads to someone bigger, or unlocks a case they couldn't crack, your risk becomes their reward. How does it actually work? First, it's not magic. It's leverage. You sit down, usually with your lawyer, and you talk. What you did, what you know, who's moving what, where the weak seams are. The system wants truth it can test. Names, dates, places, recorded calls, controlled buys, the kind of details that can walk into court and hold up under a stare. But here's the twist. Cooperation only counts if it's useful. Vague stories don't pay. Lies kill deals. If you keep committing crimes while you help, that safety net snaps. And even when you give them gold, nothing happens until the people with the power put it in writing. Prosecutors decide whether to cut, reduce, or drop. Judges still have their say. Promises need paper. So why does this loophole exist? Because information moves faster than force. One person flipping can map a whole ladder. Suppliers, routes, stash houses, the accountant nobody suspected. In return, the system trades outcomes. Less time, lighter charges. Sometimes, no charges at all. It's a cold exchange, but it's efficient. Is it fair? That depends on where you're sitting. Families want accountability, not bargains. Cops want the kingpin, not the courier. Prosecutors want cases that stick. And the person under the heat wants a way out. Justice starts to look like a marketplace. There's a cost embedded in the fine print. Informants carry a target on their backs. Trust is gone. Sleep changes. You earn safety one detail at a time. hoping the people you helped can keep you from the people you crossed. And even if the case against you disappears, your name doesn't. That label follows you into rooms that don't have locks. Does this mean anyone can skate? No. Some crimes are too heavy, too public, too raw. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Information can bend outcomes that evidence alone would cement. When truth becomes a tool, guilt becomes negotiable. So if the system rewards information, what's the price of silence? In a world built on deals, the loudest sound isn't a gavel. It's someone leaning in and whispering, "I can tell you everything." Hold a glass of water up to the sun. Now tilt it. See how the light bends? That's how money moves when it doesn't want to be found. It changes direction, not shape. People say, offshore account, and you picture palm trees. Forget the postcard. It's paperwork, layers, labels, and leases that turn a simple name into a foggy silhouette. The trick isn't hiding the cash in a vault. It's hiding the owner in a maze of names. Where does the trail end? Sometimes it doesn't. It circles through companies that own companies and trusts that hold interests until the real person disappears behind polite language. It's not always illegal. That's the unsettling part. Much of it is a loophole, legal enough to pass a quick glance, slippery enough to dodge a firm grip. Think of a magic show. The hand you watch isn't the hand that matters. While you're staring at a balance, the ownership shifts, on paper, somewhere with different rules, different definitions, different deadlines. Not here, the documents say. Somewhere else. And somewhere else can mean out of reach of debts, taxes, penalties, even public scrutiny. The money is still money. The person is still the person. But the connection between them gets elastic. Is it clever strategy or something darker? You feel the difference in what doesn't happen. A clinic that never opens. A road that never gets fixed. A small business that can't compete with someone who plays by a softer set of rules. When fortunes vanish from the books, opportunity vanishes with them. No headline, no alarm, just a slow leak of trust. Here's the twist. The same systems can be used for ordinary prudence, spreading risk, handling international work, protecting privacy. But when privacy turns to secrecy, and secrecy hardens into silence, accountability goes missing. And when accountability disappears, it feels like someone got away with something awful. Not a person, but responsibility. That's the part that stings. Leaks happen, whistleblowers speak, rules tighten, then loopholes wriggle into new shapes. The maze shifts, but the pattern stays. Money searches for shadows. Shadows oblige. So what cuts through? Not outrage alone, not cynicism either. It's light, plain questions, asked again and again. Who benefits? Who decides? Who signs? When those answers are required in the open, the fog thins. A loophole lives in silence. Say its name, and the spell breaks. If this all feels distant, bring it closer. Picture a ledger with your name on it, your school, your street, your paycheck. Every line depends on trust. That's the real currency. Lose that, and the numbers don't mean much. The light is in our hands. Hold it steady, keep asking, keep looking, and watch the bend straighten. Because money can move, sure, but so can the truth. And the truth, when it's finally in the open, is hard to hide from anyone. The quietest countdown in law doesn't beep. It just stops. That's the tension behind the phrase Statute of Limitations. It sounds like a cheat code, a secret timer you can outrun. But here's the twist. It's not built to help people slip away. It's built to keep trials rooted in solid evidence, not foggy memory. So let's walk through it in a warm, insightful way, step by step. A statute of limitations is a deadline for prosecutors to file charges. Why put a clock on justice at all? Because time changes everything. Witnesses move. Memories blur. Physical evidence gets lost, handled, or contaminated. At some point, it becomes unfair to prove or defend a case on what's basically guesswork. The clock is meant to guard fairness, not to reward the wrong. But does time erase wrongdoing? No. Not every crime has a clock. The more serious the harm, the more likely that timer either stretches far into the future or doesn't exist. Many places treat offences like murder as timeless. No expiration date, no safe finish line. You can't wait it out. And here's another layer. Some clocks pause. If someone flees, hides, or the crime is only discovered later, the timer might stop and start, like a watch held underwater and then brought back into the light. The law tries to match reality, not ignore it. Picture two stories. In one, a teenager shoplifts a small item, panics, and grows up, moves on. Years pass. That clock might have run out, not to excuse the act, but to admit the trail's gone cold, and building a fair case now is a stretch. In the other story, a life is taken. Even as decades pass, the gravity doesn't fade. If a break in the case appears tomorrow, a DNA hit, a confession, a witness who finally speaks, that door can still swing open. That's not a loophole. That's justice. Taking time seriously. One more wrinkle. Criminal charges and civil lawsuits live on different calendars. The government's deadline to prosecute is one thing. A family's deadline to sue for damages can be another. Different clocks, different purposes, all trying to balance proof, harm, and fairness. So where does the myth of getting away with it come from? From the way we imagine time as an eraser. But time isn't an eraser. It's a filter. For some cases, it filters out what can't be proved reliably. For the gravest cases, it doesn't filter at all. If you remember one line, make it this. A statute of limitations doesn't bless the act. It sets a standard for the evidence. The aim isn't to let the guilty slip. It's to make sure the truth we act on is sturdy, not smudged by time. That's a harder story than a loophole. It's also a wiser one, and it's why the worst crimes don't get a clock at all. Picture this. A cop taps your window, and your cash disappears faster than your pulse can spike. Not the car, not your ID, your money. You haven't been arrested, no charges, yet it's gone. How does that happen? Two words that sound harmless together but hit like a freight train. Civil forfeiture. It flips the script. Instead of the state proving you did something wrong, your stuff gets accused. The case title might literally be The State versus $10,000. Sounds surreal, right? Here's the plain version. If officers suspect your cash, your car, even your house is linked to a crime, they can take it on the spot. Not because a jury said so, because suspicion said so. What did you do wrong? Maybe nothing. That's the twist. In many places, the burden slides onto you. You have to prove your property is innocent. And that fight isn't quick. It's paperwork and deadlines and court dates. Expense stacked on anxiety. If the amount seized is less than what a lawyer costs, a lot of people just walk away. Not because they're guilty, but because exhaustion is cheaper. Why would the system run like this? Follow the money. Agencies often keep what they seize, or a big cut of it. That creates a pressure cooker inside the process. It's not every officer, and it's not every department, but the incentive is there. and incentives tug behavior. That's how a tool meant to hit big traffickers slides into airports, highways, bus stations, grabbing envelopes of cash from regular folks who don't have a receipt for every dollar. But cash isn't illegal. Exactly. Carrying money is not a crime. Neither is driving a nice car. Yet the label suspicious sticks fast. A dog alerts. A one-way ticket. A story that feels off to someone with a badge and a quota. And suddenly your bankroll is evidence without an arrest. So, how do you protect yourself? First, know the terrain. If you're moving large sums, have a simple paper trail, a bill of sale, a letter from the bank, something you can point to. If you're stopped, stay calm, be polite, and ask clear questions. Am I free to go? Am I being detained? If they take your property, ask for a receipt, a case number, a supervisor's name. Document everything: time, place, who said what. Those details matter later. Most of all, remember the core promise. In this country, the state is supposed to prove things, beyond a reasonable doubt in criminal court, and with real evidence in civil court. That's the heartbeat of due process. When a shortcut lets power skip that proof, your rights get quiet. And rights should never whisper. Shine a light on the loophole. Talk about it. Read your local laws. Support reforms that require a conviction before property is kept, and that send seized funds to neutral budgets, not back to the seizing agency. The more people understand how the game is played, the harder it is to play people. Because liberty doesn't vanish all at once. It slips. One suspicion, one seizure, one silent nod at a time. Don't let silence do the talking. Your new neighbour brings a pie, smiles, and legally, they were born yesterday. That's the trick no one tells you about. A name can be brand new, spotless, shiny as a fresh license plate, while the person wearing it carries years of story you'll never see. Most name changes are normal: marriage, safety, identity affirmation. But in the cracks, a different use hides. Not movie-level disguises, paper level. Boxes checked, a form stamped, and the past gets quiet. How does that happen without capes or cloaks? It's the way records talk, or don't. Lots of systems still lean on names first, not fingerprints. If a file belongs to the old name and no one cross-links it properly, the trail gets foggy. Add in a patchwork of counties and states that don't all share data cleanly, and a person can slip between lines the way water slides through cupped hands. Here's the twist. Courts are busy. Judges see long calendars and short windows. If no one raises a flag, no victim notified, no prosecutor pinged, no background check that catches every alias, the approval can land with a rubber thump. A new name is lawful. The history doesn't always follow quickly. And once everyday stuff updates, bank accounts, leases, school forms, the paper world starts believing the new story. The longer it sits, the more real it feels. Does that mean a clean slate cancels harm? No. Consequences don't vanish. Warrants restitution. Records, they still exist. But visibility changes how the world responds. Bosses, landlords, even neighbours often spot check with a name. If that label's changed, the search comes back quiet. Silence can look like innocence. So what keeps this from turning into a magic trick for bad actors? More places require fingerprints, notify agencies, and cross-check against national databases. Some courts demand proof of no fraud, no outstanding judgments, no intent to dodge debts. It's getting harder to slip through. Still, gaps remain. Real life is messy. Data is messier. What can you do with that reality without living in fear? Trust patterns, not just names. When stakes are high, rely on checks that use more than letters on a page. Ask for government ID and notice if the story around it keeps shifting. Employers and organizations can use screening that matches birth dates, addresses, and biometrics, not just a single name search. And for communities, the push is simple. Better data sharing, notice to victims, and audits that don't assume the past automatically keeps up with the present. If you've been hurt, remember this. A name change doesn't erase your voice. Paper can't override people. Keep records, file reports, follow up. Justice may move slow, but it moves. Secret identities make great plots. In real life, they're not glamorous. They're a warning. A reminder that trust isn't in the label we read, it's in the proof we verify. And the more we tighten those quiet gaps, the less room there is for the wrong story to win. The loudest sound in a courtroom isn't the gavel, it's the quiet shuffle of folders that never seem to run out, because someone can afford not to. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Court isn't just a contest of facts, it's a contest of stamina, time, attention, and who can keep paying for both. When money steps into the ring, it doesn't argue better, it argues longer. It files more motions, hires more experts, schedules more hearings. It doesn't change the truth, it changes the air. Everyone has to breathe. Picture two sides. One shows up with a single attorney who's been juggling cases all week, and a client who took off work they can't afford to miss. The other arrives with a small army, each person owning a tiny corner of the story. One voice asks for a fair shot. The other voice asks for 1,000 small things and keeps asking. What happens then? Judges and juries are human. Over time, the pile of paper becomes a strategy. Flood the zone with information, stretch the clock, turn clarity into fog. Psychologically, when people are overloaded and tired, they reach for the simplest path that still sounds reasonable, not because it's truer, but because it's easier to hold in your head under pressure. Imagine watching a case like a game of chess. You think it's about kings and queens. But here's the twist. The wealthier side keeps swapping pawns for extra queens, not because the rules say so, but because they can pay for moves you didn't know existed. Subpoena here, deposition there, expert reports that take days to decode. By the time the other side responds, the board has changed again. Is truth still in the room? Yes. But truth can be drowned out by 1,000 reasonable-sounding doubts. A single contradiction, emphasized just right, can make solid evidence feel shaky. A delay can turn a witness's memory from crisp to blurred, and a tired listener will confuse complex with uncertain. So what do we do with that? First, name the tactic. Overwhelm. When you name it, you notice it. When you notice it, you don't mistake volume for validity. Second, pay attention to the through line, the few core questions that actually decide the case. Keep circling back. When a storm of details hits, ask, what does this change about the central claim? Often, the answer is nothing. And for anyone who ever sits in a jury box or speaks up for someone with less power, remember this. Patience is a kind of courage. Clarity is a kind of courage. They level the field when money tries to tilt it. A fair system should make the game about the facts again, not the wallet behind them. That's why a strong close, a return to the heart of the matter, is not flair, it's a responsibility. It's how you cut through the fog. So the decision is about what really happened, not who could afford more fog. Expensive lawyers shouldn't decide outcomes. Evidence should. In a just world, overwhelm loses its power, and justice isn't a luxury item. Hear that tiny voice that says, once the door clicks and the cuffs come off, you can just melt into the night. That voice is lying to you. Bail isn't a loophole, it's a leash. The papers you sign are a promise, a contract, and a clock. You get temporary freedom, sure, but it's borrowed freedom. There's a thread tied to the courthouse, and if you yank on it, everything attached to you yanks back. Here's the myth. Pay a bondsman, step outside, skip town, start fresh. Here's the reality. You don't vanish. You multiply your problems. A new warrant, harsher terms, lost trust. And the person who co-signed for you, the friend, the partner, the parent, they're left carrying the cost. Their savings, their car, sometimes their home, gone. Not because they failed you, but because you ran. Think the bondsman shrugs and writes it off. That bond is their money on the line. They're motivated. They move. They knock on doors you forgot you opened. They call numbers you thought were safe. And they keep receipts. Your favourite coffee spot. Your cousin's place. That job you swore you quit. In a world of digital breadcrumbs, running isn't clever. It's loud. But what if you just need time? What if the date doesn't work? Or the child care falls through? Or the bus breaks down? Ask yourself this. Do you want a judge to see you as a flight risk? Or as someone who shows up, speaks up, and takes the process seriously? There's a better play, and it isn't flashy. It's simple. Talk to your lawyer early. If something changes, say it fast. Judges notice effort. They notice honesty. Showing up buys credibility. Credibility buys options. Running buys nothing but fear. Missed a hearing by accident. The worst move is hiding. The fastest way to stop the snowball is to turn toward the courthouse, not away from it. Step up, explain, take the hit if you have to. And reset the path. It's not painless, but it's controlled. And control is everything. And here's the twist. The exploit people whisper about isn't a secret door. It's a trap disguised as freedom. The real move is the boring one. Keep your word. Keep your phone on. Keep your address current. Keep your circle tight and informed so nobody's blindsided. Every small responsible choice stacks in your favour. Ask yourself, one last time, do you want a short sprint into panic or a steady walk toward a life you can actually keep? Run if you want the rush. Show up if you want the life. Because the only thing you get away with when you skip on bail is losing everything that matters. Your credibility, your support, your future. And that's not a loophole. That's a loss. Picture this. Your phone buzzes with a reminder, and it uses a name that doesn't feel like yours. Not anymore. The sound is the same, the screen's the same, but the word that flashes up, that's the part that changed. You swallow, nod, and answer like it's normal. People think disappearing is about running, about outrunning consequences, outsmarting the world, outmaneuvering a past. Here's the shift. It isn't escape, it's protection. A pact that trades convenience for safety, and anonymity for the chance to tell the truth and still breathe tomorrow. Let's make it real. Say your name was Maya. Now it's Lena. You practice the new signature on scratch paper until your wrist learns it. You rehearse the backstory, where you grew up, the little restaurant you always loved, the teacher who inspired you. It's a script you can't fumble, because memory, under stress, grabs for the familiar. And the familiar is the one door you can't open anymore. Psychologically, identity is a story we repeat. Friends, routines, places, until it feels like bone. Switch the story, and your bones rattle for a while. That's normal. That's the work. You buy groceries, and the cashier asks, paper or plastic, and it's nothing. Then they say your new name, and it's everything. Your mouth answers on cue. Your heart answers with a drum. Later, you'll laugh, softly, at how much power a few letters hold, but right now, you're learning a new reflex, the way a left-handed person learns to write with their right hand. Awkward at first, smoother with practice. And here's the quiet truth. The practice isn't just for the world. It's for your mind. So your new life has somewhere to live inside you. Is it freedom? Not really. It's structure. It's morning check-ins, careful choices, small circles, and the discipline to say less than you want to say. It's safety, layered over fear. Thin at first, thicker over time. And it's courage, the kind that doesn't shout, the kind that makes dinner, pays rent, remembers birthdays under a different name, and still finds tenderness in the day. There's a myth that vanishing erases the past. It doesn't. It reframes it. Instead of being hunted by history, you're guarded from it. Instead of telling every story, you choose the ones that don't pull you back into danger. That choice is your power. Rooted in psychology and human behavior, that reframe is how a person stays whole when the details can't. Temptations show up like old songs, an urge to text a friend, a photo from years ago, a holiday that makes your fingers hover over a number you still remember. You pause. You breathe. You choose the new path again. That's not hiding. That's honoring the reason you stepped into the light in the first place. So, yes, you vanished under a new name. But you didn't disappear. You relocated who you are to a safer address. The past still exists. It just doesn't get to own you. Call that running if you want. It's not. It's a slow, steady walk toward a life that can finally meet you, without needing to know your old name to see your worth. There's a business where you never make a thing, yet your product is fear. You send letters, not prototypes. You cash checks, not ideas. It's called patent trolling. On paper, it looks like protecting inventions. In practice, it's a strategy. Buy vague or overly broad patents. Point them at anyone who's building something similar, and threaten a lawsuit so costly that settling feels cheaper than fighting. It's not safeguarding creativity, it's monetizing ambiguity. That's the reframe that matters here. Picture this. You're running a tiny team that just launched a clever tool. Then a letter arrives from a company you've never heard of. It says they own the rights to a general idea your product allegedly uses. Pay a licensing fee, or they'll sue. Your stomach drops. You call a lawyer. The estimate to defend yourself is staggeringly high. And here's the twist. Whether you're right or wrong is almost beside the point. The math says, settle for less than the cost of a trial, keep the lights on, and move on. So you pay. Then they move on to the next target. Why does this work so well? Psychologically, people fear losses more than they value equivalent gains. That fear pulls decisions toward the safest, fastest exit. Add uncertainty, months or years in court, unclear outcomes, spiraling fees, and the pressure to fold skyrockets. Trolls bank on that human calculus. It's not about proving originality. It's about pricing your anxiety. And notice the asymmetry. Builders have products, customers, reputations, things to break. Trolls have paperwork and patience. They don't need to ship or support anything. They just need you to blink first, not invention, but intimidation, not progress, but profit. Ask yourself, If someone profits only when you panic, are they protecting innovation or feeding on it? Another angle, this model scales. Once a template letter works, it can be copied 100 times with almost no extra effort. A single broad claim becomes a toll booth on a busy road. Every car pays a little, not because the toll is fair, but because stopping traffic would cost more. That image sounds harsh, but it's accurate. It's a business built on friction, not on making anything smoother. So what do you do if you're building? First, sanity check the panic. Fear wants you to sign now. Breathe, get counsel, and look for allies, industry groups, pro bono clinics, even other founders who've seen the same letter. Second, document your work, dates, designs, drafts, so you're not scrambling for proof under pressure. Third, design with clarity. The clearer your tech and your claims, the less room there is for someone else's fog. Psychologically, clarity creates a sense of safety and lowers knee-jerk reactions, which helps you choose, not just react. Here's the bigger truth. Real innovation is fragile. It needs space, patience, and a fair field. When loopholes reward lawsuits over leaps, the signal gets drowned in the noise. It chills the next idea before it's even sketched. Protect the builders. Don't feed the fear. Choose clarity over fog. That's how progress outruns the toll booth. Ever had someone light the fuse and then blame you for the explosion? That's the heart of an entrapment defense. It's not a magic escape hatch. It's a question. Did the government create the crime, or did they just catch it? Picture this. Someone whispers about solving a problem. They push, they flatter, they promise protection, they dangle money, then press harder. You hesitate. They keep coming. Weeks of nudges turn into pressure. Suddenly, the plan isn't yours anymore. It's theirs. That's the shape of a trap. But here's the twist. Simply offering an opportunity isn't entrapment. Undercover officers can pose as buyers, as fixers, as friends. If you were already ready to bite, if you jumped at the first offer, that's not a trap. That's you revealing what you were predisposed to do. So what does predisposed really mean? Think of it as your internal green light. Prior talk, past attempts, quick enthusiasm, detailed knowledge. Those signals tell a jury you didn't need much convincing. If the idea was already alive in you, the defense fades. On the other hand, entrapment starts to breathe when the pressure is heavy and the reluctance is real. When the push doesn't stop. When they exploit fear, loneliness, addiction, debt, or grief. When they make repeated pleas, please do this for me, or toss out promises of safety and reward. The law looks at the who and the how. Who planted the seed and how did it grow? Let's ground it. Imagine someone tries to hire you for violence. If you say no, then no again, and they keep at you, tugging your emotions, offering protection, setting every step. Your choice starts to look like their design. But if you say yes quickly, brag you've done it before, and lead the planning, that's not entrapment. That's opportunity meeting readiness. There's also a fairness check built into the system. Some courts ask, did the government's behaviour cross a line any decent society would reject? Others focus on you. Were you likely to do this without them? Both tracks circle the same core: accountability. And here's what surprises people. Claiming they set me up doesn't erase evidence. It invites a closer look at how that evidence was made. Your side puts on proof. The government answers. The jury gets a lens. Were you pushed into a crime you wouldn't have done? Or were you caught doing what you were already willing to do? It's not a cheat code. It's a boundary line, protecting everyone from the state manufacturing criminals out of thin air, while still letting investigators catch real ones. So, if the fuse was lit, ask the hard question. Who struck the match? Because the answer to that question, more than anything, decides whether a setup is a story or a defense. Ever notice how some price tags feel a little too light, like they're missing a story? That missing piece is often a child's shift, hidden in the shadows of a global supply chain, not a cartoon villain, a loophole, then another, and another. Picture a simple shirt, cotton from one country, spun in another, dyed somewhere else, cut and sewn in a different place, finished and packed far away. So many hands touch it that the trail blurs, and in that blur, a child can slip in. Here's where it happens. A small workshop, just below the size that triggers inspections. A family help exception that lets long hours slide because the boss calls the kids helpers, not workers. Home-based piecework paid by the task, not the hour, where tiny fingers mean faster stitching and the ledger still says adult labour. Subcontracting, stacked 2 or 3 layers deep, where the brand audits the first factory, while the real pressure gets pushed to the backstreet unit with no sign out front. There's the seasonal surge, harvest week, holiday rush, big promotion, when suppliers can't say no, so labour brokers say yes. Papers get fixed. A training program runs overnight. Auditors are scheduled, so children are sent home the day before and return when the clipboards are gone. On paper, it all looks fine. On paper, kids never work nights. Feels slick, doesn't it? That's the trick. It's not one big lie. It's a dozen small ones that fit together perfectly. So how do we close the gaps? Brands have to map the chain beyond the first tier, not just the polished factory, but the dye house, the farm, the home where buttons are sorted. Unannounced, worker-centered checks with translators and safe hotlines matter more than staged tours. Pay by the hour, not by the piece. Ban recruitment fees so no one is working off a debt. Verify age with community records and schools, not just a flimsy card. Make long-term commitments and pay enough so suppliers aren't forced to squeeze the youngest and cheapest. List suppliers publicly, all the way down, so sunlight hits the corners. Lawmakers need to tighten exemptions that let family help mask hazardous work, license labour brokers, raise penalties that actually bite, and require companies to report what they found and what they fixed. And us, we have power too. Ask brands a simple question. How do you know? Not what do you promise. How do you know? Buy fewer things, better things. Support groups that monitor the ground. Use customer service and investor votes to push for real transparency. If you manage a team, stop rewarding the cheapest bid with the fastest deadline. That clock ticks on someone's childhood. A fair price has a fair story. When the story's honest, no one has to disappear to make it work. If a bargain needs a loophole, it's not a bargain. It's a bill that a child pays, and that cost is too high. Picture a door that's technically closed, but everyone walks through it anyway. That's a grey market. It lives in the space between what the law says and what the law meant, where businesses don't break rules. They bend them until the rules look like balloon animals. Here's the trick most people miss. The product rarely changes. The label does. Call a pill a supplement, stamp not intended to diagnose, treat, or cure. And suddenly it's not a medicine. It's a vitamin with ambition. Sell a chemical with for research only, or not for human consumption. And the seller shrugs, palms up. We never said you should use it. Vapes become novelties. Paraphernalia becomes tobacco accessories. Same object, new costume. When labels aren't enough, geography steps in. Move the server offshore. Incorporate where the rules are friendlier. Now the risk lives in another time zone, and enforcement has to buy a plane ticket. Jurisdiction isn't a wall, it's a maze. And grey markets learn the map by heart. And if geography doesn't solve it, liability does. Platforms say, we're just the marketplace. The seller says, we're just the supplier. The affiliate says, we're just sharing links. Everybody is just something. Meanwhile, the money flows. That word, platform, is a shield as sturdy as a medieval tower. Sometimes the workaround is social. Make it a club, not a store. Members only. Donation-based. Religious sacrament. Change the frame and you change the rules you're judged by. A pop-up turns into a church. A transaction becomes a gift. It sounds silly until it works. Consultants love this space. Not doing the thing, just teaching the thing. Educational purposes. Templates. For entertainment only. They don't cross the line. They chalk a fresh line a step behind and dance on that. So, is it legal? Or just not illegal yet? That's the heartbeat of a grey market. It lives in timing. Regulators move like glaciers. Startups move like lightning. If you can sprint for a year, gather users, become useful, by the time the rules arrive, you're grandfathered in, or you are the rule. Yesterday's outlaw rides into today with a lobbyist and a new name, and tomorrow it's an industry. You can spot the playbook. Watch for language that shuffles responsibility. We don't sell. We connect. Watch for disclaimers that scream, wink. Not a bank, not a broker, experimental. Watch for the sudden hop across borders, the membership paywall, the platform that takes a cut without touching the goods. And here's the twist. The bigger the "don't look at us" sign, the closer you are to the engine. Is it clever? Sure. Is it sustainable? Only until the attention gets too bright. Because grey markets thrive in shadows. Low profile, high margin, fast pivots. Shine a light, and they either legalize, get shut down, or mutate into something new. If you're trying to understand what's legit and what's just barely, ask 3 questions. Slowly. What's the real value being sold? Who actually holds the risk? And when the music stops, who's left standing with the liability? If the answers feel slippery, you're not looking at a business. You're looking at a loophole with a logo. The scariest word in criminal law isn't guilty, it's again. So, can someone be tried twice for the same crime? You've heard the phrase double jeopardy. It sounds like a steel door that slams shut after one trial. But here's the twist. It's a shield, not a magic key. At its core, double jeopardy means this. Once a jury is sworn in, or in a judge-only trial once the first witness testifies, the government can't keep hauling you back for the exact same offence after an acquittal. New evidence shows up a week later, even a confession. If you were acquitted, that door is locked. That's the point. To stop harassment. To stop the state from taking endless swings until it finally lands one. But is it a loophole you can game? Not really. A hung jury, where jurors can't agree, doesn't count as a clean ending. The case can be tried again. That's not the state getting cute. It's the law saying, we didn't finish. If you're convicted and you appeal and you win, you can face a new trial. Why? Because you asked to rewind the tape. The law lets the government press play again. different charges can also change the picture. It's not about the story of what happened. It's about the elements of the offence. If the second charge requires proof of something the first one didn't, it may be considered a different offence. Same night, same facts, different legal puzzle pieces. And here's a big one. Different victims count as different crimes. One act that harms two people isn't one crime. It's two. There's also the two governments wrinkle. State law and federal law are separate sovereigns. The same act can break both. That means a state acquittal doesn't always stop a federal case, and vice versa. It's controversial, but it's real. Civil court, whole other game. Being found not guilty in criminal court doesn't stop a family from suing for wrongful death. Criminal trials demand proof beyond a reasonable doubt. Civil trials ask for something lighter. Same tragedy, different rules. What about clever tricks? Get charged with something smaller. Beat it. Then claim you're untouchable for anything bigger from the same incident. Careful. Prosecutors know the lesser included offence trap. If a second charge is just a bigger version of the first, double jeopardy can block it. But if it's truly different, the door may still be open. So is double jeopardy a ticket to walk free? No. It's a hard-earned protection against being ground down by repeat prosecutions. It locks one door, the same government, the same person, the same offence, after a real finish. Want the honest truth? The only sure way to beat the system is boring. Don't commit crimes. And if the law ever points at you, don't test your luck on rumours and myths. Talk to a lawyer, breathe, and remember, double jeopardy is a shield, not a cheat code. Picture a courtroom where the truth feels negotiable and the price tag is your future. A door opens, not to innocence, not to guilt, but to a bargain. It sounds like a magic trick. It isn't. It's a plea. Here's the game. A prosecutor looks at the risk of a messy trial. A defense attorney looks at the risk of a devastating verdict, and both reach for a shortcut. You trade a bigger accusation for a smaller confession. You say, yes, I did a lesser thing. In return, the system says, fine, we'll give you less punishment, or sometimes a shot at something that looks like freedom. Is that justice or just strategy? Trials are coin flips with your life on the line. Evidence can be strong, or it can be shaky. Witnesses forget. Juries disagree. Memories warp under pressure. A plea deal sweeps the chaos into a neat package. No spectacle, no uncertainty. A signed paper, a few words spoken, and gavel down. It's quick, it's clean, it's efficient. But clean doesn't always mean fair. When the stakes are sky high, fear does the talking. People take deals because they're terrified of the worst possible sentence, even if they believe they could win, even if they swear the story is more complicated. Would you roll the dice with your life on the table? Now, about those so-called loopholes. Some folks whisper like there's a secret code that lets people walk after something unspeakable. The truth is quieter. It's leverage. Maybe the case is built on thin ice. Maybe key evidence could be thrown out. Maybe a witness is shaky. The prosecution weighs the risk and thinks, we'd better lock in something, even if it's less than the top charge. The defense thinks, we'll take the sure thing, even if it means wearing the label of guilty for something smaller. Everyone gets certainty. No one gets the whole truth. Is that a win or just a trade? Look closer and you'll see the hidden cost. That reduced charge still sticks. A record follows you to job interviews, across borders, through every "Have you ever" box on a form. The family of a victim may feel robbed of a full reckoning. The person who takes the deal carries a story that never gets fully told in open court. Maybe the system avoided a gamble, but at what price? Plea bargains are the pressure valve of a crowded machine. They move cases, they spare time, they keep the wheels spinning. And when they work well, they can spare everyone more pain. But when they're misused, they turn justice into math, odds and endpoints, numbers on a page, fear dressed up as certainty. If you ever face that door, remember what's on the table. Not just less time, not just a lighter label. A bargain is a story you agree to live with. Would you take the deal? Because this is how lesser guilt gets traded for the illusion of freedom. And sometimes that's the closest thing the system will offer to an escape. A pen glides, a checkbook sighs, and a heavy door seals shut. Hear that click? That's the sound of a story disappearing. Here's how it happens. Not with capes or car chases, with contracts, with quiet. A tragedy explodes, headlines flare, everyone's angry. Then an offer lands on the table. It comes wrapped in empathy, but the bow is made of cash. The pitch is simple. We can't undo the harm, but we can fix the future. Tuition, a mortgage, medical care, a chance to breathe. And all it asks in return is silence. Silence. Why does that matter so much? Because trials run on voices. They run on witnesses who show up, who remember, who believe it's worth reliving the worst night of their lives. Take away the voices, soften them, fatigue them, bind them with a no comment, and the machine grinds. A prosecutor can be relentless, sure, but evidence has a heartbeat. If the people closest to the truth stop talking, or talk only through lawyers, the truth limps. And those contracts, they're dressed up as no admission of guilt, confidential terms, closure for the family. Closure is real. Grief is heavy. When someone waves a lifeline over a dark ocean, who wouldn't grab it? That's the trap. The lifeline is tied to a gag. You're saved, but you can't point to the person who threw you overboard. Is that even legal? Pieces are. Civil suits and settlements are normal, meant to make people whole when there's harm. But when money and secrecy wrap around a criminal act, the lines blur. Nobody writes, "We buy your silence," in black ink. They imply finality. They whisper privacy. They speak the language of healing while the clock ticks and evidence cools. Memories fade, juries like neat stories. By the time a case reaches them, the edges are sanded down. Here's the twist. The public thinks justice is a straight shot, bad thing, arrest, trial, verdict. In private rooms, justice is a negotiation, not about innocence, about appetite. How many years are you willing to spend in court? How many headlines can your family endure? The side with deeper pockets stretches the timeline, adds motions, adds experts, adds fog. Pressure isn't just force, it's duration. So does the check make the crime disappear? No, but it can bury it deep enough that only a shovel with a badge and a very determined arm can find it again. And not every office has that arm. Not every jury can see through smoke. Not every family wants to keep bleeding in public to prove what they already know in private. If you're wondering what justice costs, listen for what can't be said. Notice who stops returning calls. Notice how a roaring case turns into a whisper, and then into a rumour. The scariest part isn't the money. It's how normal it looks. A signature, a handshake, a carefully worded statement about moving forward. And the door clicks again. Because when silence is part of the settlement, the rest of us inherit the debt. We pay with doubt, with cynicism, with a little less faith that the truth can stand on its own feet without a sponsor. That's the price of a quiet room. And it's never just paid once. Tell me if this sounds familiar. You see someone post a photo next to a shiny car or a 5-star suite and whisper, "Must be nice." Here's the twist. Sometimes it is nice, and sometimes it's just smart. Not sneaky, smart. Luxury can live under the umbrella of business when there's a clear purpose, real work tied to it, and a paper trail that tells the story. So let's reframe how you see luxury. The tax code doesn't care about sparkle, it cares about substance. If an expense is ordinary for your industry, necessary for the result you're pursuing, and documented, it can be legitimate. The price tag doesn't make it personal. The purpose does. What turns a splurge into a strategy? Proof. Use. Intention. And here's the kicker. You build that proof before you swipe the card, not after. Picture the dream car. If it's just for brunch and selfies, that's personal. But if it's a rolling asset, wrapped with your brand, used for client shoots, on-site visits, product runs, and you keep a mileage log, a calendar of meetings, and invoices that connect that car to revenue. Now it's a business tool with a luxury finish. Same object, different story. Think travel. A weekend escape is personal. A trip structured around a keynote, a client summit, site scouting, or content capture is business. Book the meetings first. Save the emails. Keep the agenda. If you add a day for sand and sunsets, cool. Just separate what's personal from what's work. The ocean doesn't decide the category. Your evidence does. Fashion's tricky. Designer clothes you'd wear anywhere, usually personal, but wardrobe that only exists for the job, like a unique, on-camera look, a branded uniform, or pieces held in a studio closet for recurring shoots that can cross into legitimate territory when you tie purchases to productions and outcomes. Keep receipts attached to the project. Make the connection obvious. Meals can be elegant and still be business when there's a real conversation on the table. Clients, collaborators, a specific deal. Note who you met, why you met, and what came from it. Be precise. The food is forgettable. The record is everything. High-end gear, memberships, experiences, they all follow the same rule. If they feed the work, document how. If they're just for fun, own that too. Nothing tanks a legit write-off faster than trying to make a vacation wear a fake name tag. Psychologically, this is simple. Your future self needs a narrative that's easy to verify. When your intentions are clear and your records are clean, you lower anxiety later and raise confidence now. It's easier to act boldly when you know you can defend the choice. One more boundary: ethics. This is about alignment, not loopholes. Laws vary and rules change, so talk to a qualified pro before you get creative. The goal isn't to hide, it's to shine a light on the real business value in things people assume are just luxury. Here's the bottom line. Luxury isn't the write-off. The business is. Make it purposeful. Make it relevant. Make it recorded. And the nice things start doing real work for you. That's not cheating. That's clarity, structure, and a story your numbers can actually tell. Picture a mailbox with armor plating rolling through an airport, and every officer has to look away, not because they're lazy, because the law says, hands off. That mailbox has a name, the diplomatic bag. It isn't always a bag. It can be a pouch, a locked trunk, even a crate. If it's sealed and clearly marked, it travels with a kind of force field around it. Not a sci-fi shield, legal immunity. Once sealed, it can't be opened or detained by the country it's passing through. That's the rule. Why does something like that exist? Because countries need a way to send sensitive stuff, documents, parts, equipment, without another government peeking. You can't run diplomacy on gossip and guesses. You need a line that's secure, predictable, and boring. The bag is that line. Now here's the twist. People hear immune from inspection and think, perfect hiding spot. Could someone slip anything inside and make it vanish across borders? That's the dramatic version. The real version has teeth. The bag is meant only for official use. Abuse it, and you've broken a treaty. The host country can refuse the shipment, send it straight back unopened, or kick the people involved out of the country. One bad stunt can shut doors for years. But what stops a determined cheat? Paperwork and politics. Two words that sound dull, but they bite. A real diplomatic bag carries visible markings. It travels under seal. There's a designated courier with a letter naming them, and they're protected so the bag stays intact. If the seal's wrong, if the markings are sketchy, if the paperwork doesn't sing, it's not a diplomatic bag. It's just a suspicious box, and it won't get a free pass. Still, the idea tempts people. Imagine a heavy crate wheeled onto a flight at dusk, a clerk glancing at a glossy seal, and everyone trying to read each other's faces. That image sticks because there's a loophole vibe. It feels like a cheat code. But notice what the cheat code costs. If you're caught, you don't just face a fine. You can spark a diplomatic storm, expulsions, sanctions, missions shuttered, headlines that won't die. That's not a clean escape. That's a mess with flags attached. So is a diplomatic bag a magic trick that lets anyone slip away? No. It's a promise between states. Keep our pouch safe, and we'll keep yours safe. It protects secrets, not crimes. And while it looks like a door you could push, the moment you push it for the wrong reason, it slams back. Hard. If you're searching for a way to disappear, this isn't it. If you're searching for how power moves quietly, this is the lesson. The bag works because of trust, with consequences. And that trust, not the seal, is the real lock. Hear that? It's the sound of a pause in a courtroom, the kind that makes everyone lean in. Silence can feel powerful. It can even look like strategy. But here's the truth. Silence isn't a cheat code. When people talk about non-disclosure, they imagine a secret door that lets someone slip past accountability. The reality is more boring and more serious. Non-disclosure isn't a loophole, it's a set of guardrails that keep a trial fair. So what actually lives inside that word? There's the right to remain silent. That protects a person from being forced to incriminate themselves. It's not a wink at hiding evidence. It's a shield against coerced confessions. There's attorney-client privilege. That gives you space to speak honestly with your lawyer so they can defend you. It doesn't let anyone destroy evidence or lie. Lawyers can't present what they know is false, and they can't help you hide the ball. If a client pushes them toward a cover-up, the brakes go on, fast, and there's discovery. Both sides share key information, so the fight is fair. Prosecutors have a special duty to hand over evidence that could help the defense. If they hold it back, courts can punish them, sometimes harshly. Not because someone found a trick, but because fairness matters more than winning. On the defense side, there are rules too. Notice requirements, expert reports, sometimes alibi disclosures. The dance is choreographed so surprises don't ambush the truth. Does that mean anyone can game the system? No. Trying to hide evidence legally is like trying to swim through concrete. The moment someone crosses into concealment, tampering, or coaching a lie, it's not strategy. It's a new crime. Judges can sanction. Juries can be told to draw negative inferences. Cases can collapse. Careers can end. And yes, charges like obstruction can follow. But what about stories where a case gets tossed because something wasn't disclosed? That's not a high-five moment. It's a siren. It means the process was compromised. Courts throw flags to protect the integrity of the whole field, not to let someone sprint to freedom. The remedy is there to say, fairness first, even when it stings. Here's the twist. The most effective non-disclosure isn't about hiding. It's about boundaries. Knowing when to speak, when to stay quiet, and how to do both within the rules. It's about a system designed to chase the truth without trampling rights. If you're picturing a magic sentence or a clever wink that makes evidence vanish, there's TV talking. In real life, those moves backfire. Fast. So remember this. Guardrails aren't escape routes. They're there to keep justice on the road. And if you ever find yourself near the line, the only safe plan is simple. Follow the rules, tell your lawyer the whole story, and let the process do what it's built to do. Ever felt a hush move through a room like a velvet curtain? Soft, heavy, final. That's what money sounds like when it wants something. It doesn't knock. It glides. It smiles. It calls itself a favor. Power doesn't shout. It whispers your name, then gives you a seat, a badge, a thank you that looks exactly like opportunity. And here's the trick. What used to be a bribe gets a costume change. A plain envelope becomes a donation. A hidden debt turns into a consulting fee. The deal isn't dirty anymore. It's influence. You know how that plays out. Someone lunches you, praises your instincts. You feel seen. Then they slide over a chance, an introduction, a speaking slot, a sponsorship. No pressure, of course. You're told you've earned it. It's framed as support, not leverage. The hook isn't metal. It's velvet. Is it wrong if everyone calls it normal? Language does the laundering. Access replaces quid pro quo. Partnership covers payoff. A non-disclosure agreement? That's just professional. And once the words are polished, the silence sells itself. You don't think you're hiding anything. You think you're being wise. Here's the quiet choreography. First, flattery softens the ground. Then, value arrives disguised as merit. Finally, there's a handshake with paperwork that makes everything look clean. And if anyone asks later, you've got a brochure, a grant letter, a calendar, invite that says strategy session. Nothing to see, everything to feel. But notice what vanishes. Questions, doubt, the itchy part of your conscience that wants the full story. When power buys silence, it doesn't gag you with force. It teaches you the new lyrics. You call it loyalty. You call it discretion. You call it just how the world works. What's the real cost of that hush? Truth gets priced out of the room. People who can't afford the vocabulary of influence get steamrolled. Decisions tilt toward the highest bidder. Accountability goes missing, and the paper trail sings a lullaby while the damage keeps walking. And here's the twist. No one needs to threaten you. You'll do the quieting yourself. You'll pick the gentlest word, the safest path, the email that says, appreciate the support, instead of, why is this happening? So ask this out loud, even if only to yourself. Who benefits if I stay quiet? What do they gain if I call this favor influence and move on? If this gift were read aloud to a crowd, would it still sound clean? Power buys silence with soft hands. It leaves fingerprints anyway. If someone's offering you access, ask for clarity. If they say partnership, ask what happens when you disagree. If the perks come with a wink, name the price of your voice in full sentences with the lights on. Because once you trade your voice for comfort, the silence doesn't end when the check clears. It settles in. It learns your name. It tells the story for you. Make the quiet answer you, not the other way around. Picture a courtroom where someone whispers, "Just plead insanity," like it's a magic key that opens a secret door. Tempting idea. Sounds like a slick loophole. But here's the twist. It's not a door. It's a brick wall with a tiny, locked window. Insanity, in the law, isn't about being odd or unpredictable. It's very specific. It asks, at the exact moment of the crime, did this person understand what they were doing and that it was wrong? Some places add a second angle. Even if they knew, were they so impaired that they couldn't control their actions? That's not a vibe, that's a high bar. And it's judged by evidence, not by sympathy. Now, there are two different lanes people mix up. One is insanity at the time of the act. That's the classic plea. The other is competency right now. Competency simply asks, can you understand what's going on in court and help your lawyer? If the answer is no, the case pauses. Treatment follows. When you're better, the case comes back. That's not an escape hatch. It's a delay, not a free pass. If someone raises insanity, the process gets intense. Courts order evaluations. Multiple clinicians, independent from the defense, dig through medical records, interviews, family history. They look for patterns that started long before the arrest. They test for malingering, faking symptoms, with tools designed to catch it. And juries hear from both sides. The picture has to be solid, consistent, and rooted in real illness that blocks basic understanding or control. So what happens if they succeed? Here's where the movie script and real life split. Not guilty by reason of insanity doesn't mean you stroll out and grab lunch. It usually means secure hospitalization under strict supervision. For years. Sometimes longer than a prison sentence would have been. Every movement is tracked. Medication is mandatory. Review boards check and recheck. Any hint of danger. Release gets denied or revoked fast. In some places, there's guilty but mentally ill. That sounds like a soft landing, but it isn't. You're still guilty. You go to prison with treatment folded in. And in others, a diminished capacity argument might drop a charge down a level, but you're still facing consequences. Could someone game the system? People try. But faking severe psychosis isn't like memorizing lines. Clinicians ask the same questions in different ways, days apart. They look for signs you can't fake, sleep patterns, disorganized thinking, the way symptoms fit together over time. Inconsistency is a neon sign. Here's the bottom line. The insanity plea isn't a cheat code. It's rare, it's risky, and it trades prison bars for hospital doors that can stay shut a very long time. If you're picturing a hidden loophole, picture a labyrinth instead, one with guards at every turn and no easy exit. Picture a crime scene where the only fingerprints are on a checkbook. No cuffs, no mugshot, just a wire transfer and the door swings shut. That's the corporate liability loophole. The company pleads, the company pays, the people who made the choices walk. How does that happen? Start with the idea of a corporate person. It can be charged, it can be fined, it can even say guilty. But here's the twist. Only a person can go to jail. So when prosecutors want a quick, guaranteed hit, they aim at the entity. The result lands on shareholders, insurers, and a line item in next quarter's report. And inside the walls, the system is built to blur faces. Decisions move through layers, committees, memos, consultants, until intent gets foggy. Plausible deniability becomes a management skill. The email says, push harder, not break the law. The slide deck says, aggressive targets, not cut safety. When the hammer falls, it hits the logo, not the hands. You can feel the pattern in a simple story. A factory cuts corners, a warning gets ignored, a leak poisons a river. People get sick. The company writes a massive check. There's an apology, a headline, maybe a promise to do better. That senior executive, still golfing on Saturday, maybe a new title, maybe a bonus already banked. Fair? Ask the families downstream. Why do individuals walk? Because proving personal intent is hard. Lawyers frame the harm as a system failure rather than a person's choice. Settlements come with magic words, no admission of wrongdoing, which keeps doors closed to future cases. Boards sign off on indemnification, so the company pays the legal bills for the very people at the centre. Compliance becomes a shield, not a sword. There was a policy, a training, a box ticked, and a box ticked becomes a wall between a decision and a consequence. So what closes the gap? Claw, back, pay. When misconduct hits the public, ill-gotten bonuses should not stay in private hands. Tie liability to signatures. If you sign off on safety or risk, your name carries legal heat. Ban indemnification for willful or reckless harm. No more company-funded escape hatches. End no admission deals in cases with real victims. Put independent monitors in with teeth, reports public, deadlines binding. And if you want a culture shift, make promotion hinge on safety metrics the way it does on profit. None of this is anti-business. It's pro-accountability. Good companies already live like this. Bad actors hide behind the logo because the logo is large and the shadows are comfortable. Here's the simple rule that should be true everywhere. If a company can commit a crime, a person made the choice that made it possible. A check can say, sorry. A check can say, settled. A check can't wear handcuffs. Picture this: a single plane ticket, a new stamp in your passport, and the law forgets your name. Sounds neat, right? That fantasy sells the idea of a no-extradition hideout. Press pause on your past. Press play on a new life. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Extradition isn't a magic door that's either open or closed. It's a handshake between governments. Treaties, yes, but also one-off deals, immigration laws, police cooperation, and human rights rules that can cut both ways. Even where a formal treaty doesn't exist, there are workarounds. Authorities can deport you on visa issues, charge you with local crimes, or simply invite you to voluntarily depart. The label non-extradition is a headline. The reality is a maze. So what actually stops an extradition? Sometimes it's dual criminality. If what you did isn't a crime there, the case can stall. Sometimes it's the political offence idea, narrow, technical, often misunderstood. Human rights concerns can block transfers too. Risk of torture, unfair trials, or a death sentence can slam on the brakes. And while some countries resist sending their own citizens abroad, that doesn't make someone safe. It can just mean the case moves inside their borders, with their judges, their rules, their timeline. You might be thinking, what about those places internet lists call safe havens? Here's the twist. Lists are snapshots. Laws shift. Elections happen. Relationships thaw or freeze. A place that looked friendly yesterday can start cooperating tomorrow, especially if the case is high profile or politically inconvenient. And then there's life while you wait. Interpol notices aren't arrest warrants, but they ring alarm bells at airports and banks. Travel becomes a gamble. Money becomes traceable. Every routine check becomes a roulette wheel. You live small. You move rarely. You trust cautiously. Freedom shrinks to fit the walls of a careful life. Could a skilled legal team slow the clock, raise human rights arguments, challenge evidence, or negotiate charges? Sure. That's the legitimate route. Inside the system, not running from it. Because the system may grind slowly, but it grinds everywhere. Borders blur when prosecutors talk, when data moves, when a single signature turns a distant case into a knock at the door. So, here's the clearer picture. There's no magic country where consequences can't find you. There are only places where the fight changes shape. More paperwork, more hearings, more uncertainty. If you're counting on a loophole to make you untouchable, you're betting your future on shifting sand. The bold move isn't a new passport stamp. It's facing the mess with counsel, with a plan, with eyes open. Run, and the world gets smaller. Stand, and at least you know where the ground is. Imagine a handshake so polished it leaves no fingerprints. The deal gets done, the benefits flow, and somehow nobody touched a dime. That's the art of a bribe disguised as policy. A modern bribe doesn't knock on the door wearing a trench coat. It walks in with a smile, a white paper, and a ribbon that says jobs, growth, innovation. The check never says, "Thank you for the favour." It says, "Support for opportunity," routed through a friendly committee with a forgettable acronym. The dinner isn't a payoff, it's a policy summit. The job offer isn't a quid pro quo, it's a fellowship that begins right after the vote. So how does it work? First, the draft. A donor-funded group writes a bill with technical language that just happens to carve a tunnel through the tax code. A lawmaker introduces it, proudly, as pro-business. The same donor hosts a fundraiser a week later. Nothing illegal about that. Months pass. An agency writes the rules, and one footnote moves a decimal that saves a single company millions. Where's the bribe? On paper, nowhere. In practice, everywhere. Here's the twist. If you never register as a lobbyist, you're not a lobbyist. You're a strategic advisor. You don't knock on a member's door, you brief staff. You don't say, "Vote yes." You say, "Consider these findings." The pressure is real. The fingerprints are not. And then there's the revolving door. Serve in office, build relationships, learn the maze, step out. In a year or two, you're paid handsomely to guide others through the same maze you helped design. Is that illegal? It's not. Ever notice how money moves through social welfare groups that can't legally coordinate, yet their ads land on the same beat as a campaign's drum? Coincidence? What about a hometown project tucked into a thick bill at the last minute that quietly rewards a generous donors industry? That's not a bribe. That's a win for the district. It's like paying a toll with invisible coins. The gate still opens. The metaphor sounds cute. Here's the plain truth. The public sees the gate swing and assumes it was free. So, what closes the loopholes? Plain language definitions that treat shadow lobbyists like lobbyists. Real-time disclosures within 48 hours, not next quarter. A longer, enforceable cooling-off period. Hard walls between campaigns and outside spenders. And here's the big one. Sunlight that isn't optional. If the influence is legit, It can survive the light. Will any of that be easy? No. But look at the cost of pretending. Higher prices because competition got smothered. Weaker rules because they were never meant to bite. Cynicism that eats trust from the inside out. That's the quiet damage. You don't need a suitcase of cash to bend the public's will. You just need a stack of reasonable meetings, a few carefully placed reports, and timing that never misses. The handshake leaves no fingerprints, but the prints are still on us. Ever notice how the best lock doesn't stop a thief? It just slows them down. We build systems to feel safe. Laws, codes, rules, frameworks, clean lines, clear steps. It's comforting. But here's the uncomfortable truth we keep bumping into. Every system is written by people, and people have blind spots. That's where the cracks form. A rule says what you can't do. A loophole whispers what you still can. It happens in games where someone finds a cheesy move. In business, when fine print gets stretched. In tech, when a tiny bug becomes a big breach. Same pattern, different stage. Exploit the letter, skip the spirit. So what does that say about us? It's easy to clap for clever. It's harder to ask, who pays for the cleverness? When someone finds a way to dodge the cost doesn't vanish. It slides onto someone else, the customer, the community, the future you. And here's the twist. Exploitation scales. One person finds a bend in the rails, others follow, and suddenly the whole track is warped. Trust shrinks. Cynicism grows. We start reading the rules like enemies instead of partners. That's how culture erodes, slowly, then all at once. Is there a difference between outsmarting a puzzle and outsmarting a promise? Yes. One is play. The other is betrayal. If you're designing a system, assume the exploit exists, not as paranoia, but as design truth. Build for it. Incentives that reward the spirit, not just the checkbox. Oversight that's independent, not rubber-stamped. Fewer single points of failure. Spread the power. Spread the risk. Transparency that makes shadows rarer and shortcuts harder. Small frictions in the right places, so bad actors get tired and good actors barely notice. If you're living inside a system, hold a mirror up before you look for the gap. Ask yourself, if everyone did this, would the place still work? Would it still be fair? Would you still be proud? That gut check matters. It's not just about what you can get away with. It's about who you become while getting away with it. Because the moment you win by breaking the spirit, you join a quiet club with loud consequences. Maybe not today, maybe not to you, but the bill arrives. It always does. So here's the clean, uncomfortable, empowering truth. Every system can be exploited. The question is never, can it be done? The question is, what kind of person are you while you're doing it? The saboteur who drains trust, or the builder who patches the crack? The clever shortcut, or the durable standard? Every system can be exploited, which means every one of us is responsible for what happens next. You can buy silence, but can you buy a past that never happened? Here's the uncomfortable truth. In a lot of places, you can pay your way toward a clean slate, not by bribing anyone, but by hiring the right lawyer, filing the right petitions, and stepping through legal doors most people don't even know exist. It's marketed as redemption, a second chance. Sometimes it is, and sometimes it's a loophole with a price tag. Let's make this simple. A criminal record isn't just one thing. It's arrests, charges, outcomes, public breadcrumbs scattered across court databases and search engines. Expungement means a court orders certain records destroyed or set aside. Sealing means the public can't see them. Both sound like magic. They're not. Usually there's a waiting period. There are eligibility rules. Violent offences often don't qualify, but here's the twist. If a case is pled down to a lesser charge, or if someone enters a diversion program and completes it, that person might end up eligible to petition for expungement or sealing. If that petition is granted, employers and landlords often won't see the old case on a standard check. The past gets quieter. Where does the money come in? Paperwork is confusing by design. Petitions, certified copies, filing fees. None of it speaks plain human. A skilled attorney can navigate it fast, find the right statute, argue in the interest of justice, and make the process feel like a concierge service. That speed and certainty costs. Consultations, retainers, document prep. If you've got cash, the path is paved. If you don't, the path is a maze. And here's the shadow most people miss. Even if a court seals a case, the internet doesn't automatically forget. Private data brokers scrape court sites. News stories freeze a moment in time. Cleaning that up is a second battle. Takedown letters, opt-outs, reputation services. More time, more money, more silence for those who can afford it. So is this redemption or privilege? It depends who you ask. For someone who made a single mistake, did the work, and wants a job, expungement is mercy. For someone who can afford premium legal strategy, it can feel like a cheat code. For someone who can't, it can feel like a locked door with a glass window, watching others walk through. A hard reality check. Sealed doesn't mean erased from law enforcement databases. Judges, prosecutors, immigration officials, many can still see behind the curtain. And if you re-offend, that sealed case can roar back into relevance. The slate isn't clean. It's just polished. So where does that leave us? With a question hanging in the air. Should a second chance be a product you buy, or a promise we extend? If you're carrying a record, know your options. Ask legal aid clinics. Look for diversion programs, certificates of rehabilitation, pathways built for real change. And if you've never needed any of this, understand the quiet power of who does and who doesn't. Second chances should be earned, not purchased. But right now, they're often both.